Shit, we're live, bro. Um, all right, hey man, thanks for joining us today for the relaunch slash first slash Be Early podcast with Bethany Schwenk here today. We're not interviewing Bethany Schwenk. Bethany Schwenk is going to grill me apparently.
Yep.
Well, she was excited about it. She kept asking me. She said, "Hey, for this podcast, we should like do this interview style to kind of like tell your story initially from like where you come from and what you came from and what you're trying to do in your life and all our successes and failures. And apparently it's an interesting story.
It's pretty interesting.
I don't know if it's like that interesting. I mean, it's just,
I think it is. I think you've got a lot to share. There's been a lot that's happened this year.
oh yeah, this year's been hectic. That's hectic. That's my new thing. Hectic is my new favorite word lately. Um, so yeah, we're going to do these, probably follow up podcasts to some blog posts and some ideas. And me and you've been kind of, I don't want to say chatting for the past year, but exploring ideas and kind of pushing boundaries and perspectives and all kinds of different crazy things from relationship to self growth to leadership at the workplace to
Everything. There's been
everything. Yeah,
there's been a
anything
lot.
that encompasses life, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been a fun year, and Bethany's been kind of one of the few handful, probably two or three, I would say, that like intimately understands from December until now, December 2017
Yeah.
until now. So she's got a ton of insight on some of that, and she'll probably have. She's super curious about it, but I think she tiptoes around.
I have feelings. It's fine.
She tiptoes around a lot of it because of the uncomfortableness or taboo things around it, but then also
Yeah.
some of the timeline and some other stuff. But we'll get to that, I guess, a little bit later.
We can. Yep.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start?
I knew you were going to do that.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean where I want to start? I guess from the beginning.
Okay. This is going to be the hard part.
No, this will be like big picture. So Bethany gets super emotional because she's one of these like super protective friends where she doesn't, even though it's already happened and we've already experienced and it's already done, she tries to protect the emotions of people around it, even though I'm like pretty much more or less 100% at peace with it.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't think
fine.
I don't think she is.
I'm not.
um, but yeah, there's definitely some heavy stuff within there. So I guess we'll just start from the beginning. I 38 years old, married for someone literally just rang my doorbell.
You want to check?
No. 38 years old, I was born and raised in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside Las Vegas. You can still see the strip from our house, so it's just kind of a suburb. I guess pretty normal
No.
childhood, I
Not
guess.
not normal at all.
Yeah, mom got pregnant when she was 16, had me, and then 364 days later had my brother. So we were essentially the same age for a day when she was 17. So young single mom. My dad joined the military directly afterwards and kind of signed over control to us. And we later, rekindled and fostered that relationship. But in the beginning, I didn't know my actual biological father until I was 8 or 9, I guess.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
You should probably tell that story though.
That's a whole
How
nother
you
story. Let's get the big picture stuff out of the way. So, kind of bounce around a couple of states, spent some time in Arizona, Minnesota. My grandfather passed away, and my mom just decided to come back to Vegas and take the kids all back there, and then probably looking for a little bit more support from my grandma and her sisters and some other things. That's where my entire family is now, for the most part. In high school, played competitive sports, started in football and then in volleyball. Gravitated more towards volleyball. I grew up on the West Coast. Everyone's like, man, it's a woman's sport. I hear that shit all the time. But yeah, stayed in the same high school. That's where I met my wife. She was one of our, I don't want to say high school sweethearts because that's a whole nother conversation. I hate to use the word stole, but I used to date her best friend for about 3 years, and she used to date my best friend for about 3 years. And then my buddy left for a mission. I grew up Mormon. A little fun fact of the day there. He left on a mission, and then me and Danielle went to see him off to Argentina. And on the ride back, we just kind of.
Seriously?
Oh, you haven't heard that story yet either.
Okay.
And so yeah, I met her. I think I was a junior in high school, and we just always were really close friends. And it just kind of, I just kept going to Sunday dinners with her and her family, and all the way until I was about 20. And then when all of it kind of shook out, I proposed to her. She was still in high school. That's how stupid we are. She was 17 at the time. As soon as she turned 18, we got married. She graduated in June. We got married in September. Got pregnant in October, and then my son came a year later, and that was right around September 11th, 2001. And so obviously the emotions evolved around a lot of that stuff is what sort of pushed my military service. So I waited about a year from that, was meeting with a recruiter all year. And I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell anybody. I was just like meeting this dude and having conversations like, what about this? Meeting him for lunch and kind of just picking this dude's brain and in a weird conscious way, just trying not to make an emotional decision around a bunch of assholes that decided to attack our country at such an extreme level. Because at the time I was just like, man,
Let's go. Yeah.
yeah, give me some. Let's get a gun, dude. Who are we killing? Which is such a weird thought process, and I guess we'll probably touch on some of that a little bit because people have a hard time grasping a certain mentality around what I think certain individuals have to accept about themselves and some realities of who they are and why they were placed here. And you can call it destiny, you can call it whatever, a plan, God's plan, or if you're a religious person or whatever the case may be. But didn't want that to be like, oh man, that was so bad, and make some irrational decision, because at the time I was married and I had my son. He just turned 1. And so I had other people to consider in that decision. It wasn't just like, like I'd always been, just do whatever kind of comes to my brain. Turns out I kind of do that anyways. And so, and watching recruiter's office was just like, I want to be Delta Force. That was the thing. And he's like, got to be at Fort Bragg, got to be airborne, probably want to go special forces. And then, from kind of gave me like a rundown of like the most typical path, which is how we ended up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danielle was in school full time. She was, so my son was 1. I owned a general contracting as a side business, and as a full-time job, I was a general contractor in tile installation. So we were doing really well. Business was really good. It was about the peak time before the real estate bust in Las Vegas, which was a super booming time. So we were doing well. We bought our first home when I was 20, and I think 6 months into our marriage. So things were like pretty settled, and it was like, oh, we're going to spend the rest of our lives in our hometown. And I was like, yeah, that just doesn't feel right. So there was a lot of factors involved with that. It wasn't just, let's just go shoot people.
Yeah.
So
I think that's part of the interesting story, is that dichotomy of like who you are as a military person versus who you are in all aspects of your life.
Yeah, I think that it sets I think there's parallels, and there's, maybe if we call them ideas or labels, we always joke with Beth. That's why she's laughing right now, because we sort of don't like the idea of a lot of our discussions around like having this like, oh, you're an SF dude, because it boxes you as a specific individual now. And I've been guilty of that. It's been it almost cost me my entire marriage initially, before the story gets really nasty. But I was just like an SF guy, and it was like, you're the wife, take care of these kids. We all have to sacrifice. I'm leaving. I'm heading overseas again. Like, yeah. And there wasn't a lot of conversation around that. It was just like this unspoken expectation that neither of us are willing to talk about. Yeah. She was like, well, I guess I'm supposed to just be here for when you get home again.
Yeah. And
then I'm like, I guess I'm an SF guy. I'm supposed to just deploy. That's just what we are. And so yeah, I was in the 82nd Airborne. I was an artillery guy originally, and then deployed to Iraq back in 2003. As soon as I came home, I was like, I gotta get out of this conventional army. It was not for me. It
Yeah.
just there's nothing. I don't have anything against a lot of the conventional forces. I still have a lot of good buddies that still stayed in those arenas and do those jobs, and they're totally fulfilled and they love them. It just wasn't for me. I didn't like um, systems, and this is just how things, and the monotony of like, this is
Bureaucracy.
Monday, this is
Yep.
Tuesday, this is when it was pretty. This is your job. That's it.
Yep.
Here's the task in order to stay qualified, and here's how you do it. The special forces kind of gave us an autonomy and freedom to sort of think, and um, going back and looking at the idea of what it was, the actual logo Deo Oppressa Liber is, like free the oppressed. It kind of had this like notion inside of like, oh, that's a worthwhile cause. There's a lot of people that are oppressed, and I think guys that, men and women that are mentally and physically capable, almost sort of kind of have an obligation to at least spend some of their life in service. And I don't mean service in the sense of like you have to carry a gun and go fight wars. I mean, just do something for the benefit of other people because you have the capability to. But that circles back to
Yep.
us being at our best first prior to sacrificing that time. And I think that's where I mixed it up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
To an
everybody
extent.
has to mature through life and
Well, we don't know.
figure those things out later.
Yeah, like how do you know? 'Cause you haven't failed enough.
It's true.
I guess that's part of it. So yeah, I got out of active duty, went to the Special Forces Qualification Course back in 2004, graduated in 2006, went into the National Guard 19 Special Forces Group, and I've been there ever since. As far as my service pertains to that, National Guard's been fun. It's been really cool. There's a ton of schools and all this stuff, between combat diving to ranger school to sniper school to different shooting packages and intel stuff, but then also be able to go, I don't know, 15 or 16 different countries and teach, and kind of have impact on governments, whether it be in a small way or a little cog in the wheel, or just be able to affect people's lives on that. And that's what I really enjoyed about was the experiences around the different people and the cultures, and leaving a little piece of the way we possibly think about our lives and making those connections was super cool. So I've been doing that for the past 14 years now.
Sure.
In the National Guard.
Yep.
Midway through that, opened up a CrossFit gym back in 2013 with two Special Forces guys that was on my team. So rewind just a little bit. Back in 2011, when I was telling you that the all-in kind of thing can really strain a marriage and get people kind of questioning, like, what, was this the life that I actually signed up for? Was this where I actually wanted to be? And I still explore a lot of those conversations on how my decisions and who I was as an individual and the things that I steered clear from or went to or hid from or didn't have the conversations about, pushed some of the conversations for my wife, Danielle. And so in 2011, she asked for a divorce. She sat down on it, like literally we were just like sitting around. I was like, hey man, like something's not right with us. Like, should I leave? We've always been really good friends and very cordial when we talk to each other. And we've never really had like this volatile relationship in any aspect. It was just like, we just sat down as human beings and we're like, hey, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And she just looked at me stone cold and was like, I want a divorce. And when looking at her, I knew she meant it. I knew that was it.
This was North Carolina, 2 kids.
No, we were in San Antonio
in
at the
San
time.
Antonio.
Yeah, and she had
Okay.
just moved from North Carolina. We were separated logistically for about 3 years while I was working here in Austin, and she was selling our houses and transferring her dental hygiene license and some other stuff. So kind of did this long distance relationship thing, and it strained us
For 3 years.
for 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I went home 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah.
That's crazy.
We were just working. It was like 8 months out of the year, I was either doing SF stuff or I was on the border doing surveillance or whatever. I just couldn't ever really map up the time. And we probably weren't like, making it a priority enough to set finances aside to like, hey, I think every month I should probably fly out for 4 days. And I didn't really, I was so all in with my career and she was so all in with her career. and our kids kind of got stuck in the middle of it. They were super young and they're good kids, but
I mean, you and Danielle were also super young. I mean, you were in your 20s,
yeah,
right?
at that time we were
Yeah.
sub 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of those times where it's like everyone jokes about that. There's this big conversation about the frontal lobe being developed when you're like,
Yep.
that was right at that time when we're fully developed now. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Did we make the right decisions? Are we where we're supposed to be? And I think that's, everyone calls it the midlife crisis, but I think it's just biology to an extent where you kind of get kicked in the face a little bit of like, you have to question who you are and what you do and where you come from. And I think both of us did that. My problem, I say problem, issue for myself internally, because then I sat back and instead of looking at her and being like, what do you need from me? How can we fix this thing or whatever? I just said, hey, let's just give this time. I'll sleep on the couch, and then I'll go and fuck myself, I guess, for lack of better terms, which was super bizarre because I've never really been all that religious, and I was following the teachings of the church to keep my wife and to keep Danielle. Yeah, so I don't know if it was I had like a really big belief in it per se. I think that there may be something there. I just don't know. I just didn't have that like super strong testimony or commitment or whatever people want to call it. I think the culture of it and some stuff just didn't fit for me. And it probably works for a ton of people. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. And I really struggled with it my entire life, growing up with a single mom and trying to be in this like family oriented thing. And me and my brother were wild. We would, run around and fight almost every day at school and getting suspended. My mom was working. So we would come from as long as I can remember, it was me and my brother coming home by ourselves. That was it. There was nobody to come home to. No fault to my mom. She was just trying to work to keep the logistics rolling. So we were just wild, but not in a bad way. It was like
it was kind of in a bad way.
We just like to have fun, man. Like breaking shit and fighting. These were like, and so this is probably my super masculine qualities where like I just enjoyed it, man. I love that part of my childhood. I know that sounds super crazy. The stealing emblems off Mercedes and the chromies off for the kids' bikes, and then fighting the neighborhood bullies and stuff, and me and my brother jumping other kids. Like, we love that shit, which is so bizarre to think about now, because if my kids were running around doing that, I'd be like, I'm gonna fucking choke your head off. Like,
yep.
And
also it turned out really well for you.
Yeah, I think
not necessarily for your brother.
Yeah, no, and then that's a whole, and I'll get into that a little bit too. I guess those years, but yeah. So, anyways, my wife. Back to that conversation. I then in return was like, okay, what do I want to be based on what I think she wants me to be, which is super weird. Worked out in my favor in the sense that, and this is so weird when you start talking about maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. I don't know. It delayed enough time for us to circle back to each other and end up good.
Yeah.
So, right decision for sure. From an individual growth perspective, and if anybody was to, if I was the life coach them, we were to have these conversations, it would be something that I'd be like, I don't think you want to go down that road, because you're going to have a lot of years of unauthenticity.
Yeah. But I feel like you had to get through those years of unauthenticity to get where you are now, which is amazing.
Yeah, and maybe there's a piece of that where part of that story now is that, I'm this weird old dude now that's like, probably don't want to do that, because here's the reasons and here's the outcomes and here's some of the things that can happen, most likely will happen if you do that, and people can still gain that wisdom by seeing it in another human being and understanding if they're conscious enough to want to accept some of those perceptions. If not, then you just have to take that ride for yourself. And
yeah, but I mean, if you hadn't taken that ride, the alternative is living life without Danielle, right?
Yeah, well, and that's hard to say too, but I think had I just been like, fuck it, I'm going to go on this road and figure out who the fuck I am and roll out, because at the time she's thinking, who am I supposed to be based on religion and my family and social pressures, and I'm married, these weird expectations that she puts on herself. So, which was weird because I was trying to be in her head to figure that out. I was just like, okay, I think she wants this like really super active Mormon dude that where's the Jesus jammies and all this kind of stuff. And man, I dove so head deep into that. And I had already studied the religion growing up just out of curiosity, because I'm not going to be a part of something if I don't have any knowledge around it. So I studied it fairly heavily. I've read the Book of Mormon, 3 or 4 times now, and been through the Bible a couple of times and read a lot of teachings. And now the internet's a lot better. So I understand the religion to an extent. I just knew it didn't fit in my beliefs in my life and what I wanted to do. And, if I wanted to be in downtown Prague and have a beer with the Czech Special Forces in a strip club, then and I didn't feel bad or wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I felt bad is because I was going to have to go back. Yeah. And I was going to have to sit down with some guy, and he was going to be like, well, we're going to have to repent about this thing. And it's like, yeah, but I'm repenting about something that I don't feel bad about. I just feel bad because you
want me to feel
bad about it. It's like such a weird dynamic. So that it just didn't work for me. It didn't work in my lifestyle. It didn't work in that aspect of my life as an SF dude. But again, could have saved my marriage, because my wife is now thinking this is what I'm supposed to be as a woman.
Yeah.
And I do have this man that's like committed to me and willing to do X, Y, and Z based on what I'm supposed to be living. So I'm going to give him another chance. Which is so weird.
Which this whole thing is interesting to me, because if both of you had really delved into your authentic self, you would have come to the same conclusion.
Most likely.
But you diverted before you could convert.
I think if we would have had that honest conversation of like, fuck, man, I don't want to. Perfect example. When she finally decided, like, hey, let's figure this shit out. Mm-hmm. I'm literally driving. It's like a Saturday morning. We had I think it was our anniversary Friday night. We had an amazing night together. And like we're driving somewhere that morning from the hotel room or something. And she's like, hey, nervous as fuck, which is so weird to me.
This story cracks me up.
It's amazing. And so we're sitting there driving, and it's like, I don't know, whatever it is. She's like, hey, can you go to McDonald's? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm thinking she just wants like a McGriddle or something. And she's like driving. She gets in the drive-thru, and she leans her head out the window, and she's like, says it super fast, iced vanilla latte, something or other, whatever that she drinks from McDonald's, coffee. And the only reason I looked at her and was like, what was that about? Because she was so tense, and the energy she was putting off was like, what's he going to do? He's going to flip out on me? Is he going to because she now in her mind thinks that I'm this like wholehearted, hard charging Mormon, and I'm going to like judge her for this thing. And she's like, I've been drinking coffee for 11 years. Just like blurts this thing out. Like, I've got to get this off my chest. And I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. That you've been living in fear about drinking coffee every morning on the repercussions of what your husband's going to have towards you. So that was one of those weird moments where I think I kind of look back at that and I'm like, well, how did I create that situation? Because I contributed to it somewhere.
Yeah.
And again, that circles back to me being unauthentic and being this dude that I think she wants me to be, but she's like, oh, this guy, the guy he's going to judge me so bad for this. I know, what, dude, is so weird.
What's hard for me at this point is I've only known you guys for the past 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I've known you guys, you've been achingly honest with one another and with everyone else. So the fact that coffee was
so
a differentiator at the beginning is hilarious to me.
It's so funny. That's one of our greatest attributes, but I also think it's one of our scariest to people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think
terrifying.
honesty really exists that much in our day and age, whether it's we want to feel so accepted that we don't want to actually say stuff, and we don't want to make people feel bad around us. It's like, man, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just telling this is just what it is.
Yeah.
What the fuck you want me to say about it?
The level of honesty that you guys have is
it's absolute, man. It's absolute. There is nothing off the table, nothing that, I guess we'll get to some of that. So anyways, during that time, obviously when your wife asks for a divorce, the SF dude kicks in. Yeah. So I start kind of like, why the fuck does she want this divorce? Because when this came, I had no clue. We call it a shotgun blast to the face, because that's what it feels like. You're like, whoa, huh?
You
dude,
really had no idea.
no idea. I was like, man, I thought we had 11 wonderful years. Like, we have an anniversary coming up next month. I thought we were just,
But you've been living apart for 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, we were 6, 7 months
7
together.
months in. Yeah.
And I think that transition was a little hard for both of us. And at the time, while she was separated, so this is where it gets kind of funky. In 2009, I took this job in Austin. I met this guy named Chris Paxson. And this dude, I didn't really know him. We just kind of had these conversations. He's like, oh, SF sounds cool. He was in the Air Force. And so we kind of trained him up and got him ready. And he transferred over to the Army and he went to the Special Forces. Special Forces at Fort Bragg, which is where my wife is, and our house and the stuff she's trying to sell. And she transferred her license, and I'm in Austin. So my wife gets into wanting to run marathons. Chris is a big runner. I'm like, hey, I know this dude. He's a run coach. I'll hook y'all up. You guys can see where this is going, right? So it's the only relationship she has that's male outside of us. Yeah. Which I totally understand. And then you start now creating these pressures in your head of like, my best friend, I don't want her to judge me for X. I don't want so-and-so to judge me for X. Who do I have this nonpartisan, unbiased person in my relationship? So it makes a ton of sense to me. And she starts confiding in him, hey, I think I want a divorce. I don't, da-da-da-da. And he's like, no, don't leave your husband. Fucking guy. And eventually it starts turning into a little bit more of like a romantic relationship, but nothing's going on, right? But they're at least having the conversations. And this is all just what's been told to me. I don't know the truth of it. It is the truth of it, but I can't say how it developed in timelines and some other shit because I don't know, because it's not important to me because I don't really give a shit. But at the time I started, of course, I'm like, first thing I asked her, I'm like, hey, did you have an affair? If you did, we can get over it. Let's figure this shit out. And she's like, no, I would never do that. And me, I'm looking at her and being like, okay, well, I know her religious cornerstones and I know infidelity is like fucking burn in hell, for lack of better terms. I'm like, she wouldn't do that to herself. There's no way. Okay, I get it. But SF dudes kind of believe in redundancy. So I've got to double check that thought in my head. So I start checking phone records and stuff, and I see a ton of conversations happening between him and her. And which is funny because the moment I and she admitted this as our year unfolded this year, but as I was having these conversations with her, I was like, hey, what's with these, and this is where now she realizes, fuck, I don't know if I want to do that, and I don't know if I want my husband.
Yeah.
So now I'm just going to be a selfish thing.
Yeah.
And juggle the both of these and see what happens kind of thing. And then there's a sense of feeling of like, fuck, I'm trapped, I'm married, I already went down this other road. How do I hide it? Do I actually want to hide it? And then you're in this internal battle and struggle, which, by the way, lasts 4 years, from 2011 to 2015. Yep. But at that time, I was just like hands off. And then we slowly started kind of like getting back in. And at that point, she's like, I'm going out to see my friend in North Carolina. I just need to get away. And she went out and had an affair with this guy, Chris. And which is interesting to me because then I started seeing their conversation start to pick up because I'm checking phone records now because I'm like a little suspect. And as she comes back from that trip, I think this is the end of August or something. And our anniversary is on September 16th. And I think we were out car shopping that weekend. And we were not anything. We were just living platonically and trying to figure out, essentially separated, but in-house separated. And I kind of just am asking her about these conversations and these questions and some other things. And she immediately kind of goes into panic mode. And you can call it emotional manipulation or whatever you want to do. But she gave me a glimmer of hope that we were going to be okay.
Yeah.
And she kind of took me back and kind of was like, let's figure this thing out. I love you. It's the biggest mistake in my life. And kind of went to this panic mode of like, I just need to get him off the trail long enough to where I can hide this a little better.
Do you think that's what it was, though, or do you think she really did have a change of heart? I mean,
I think it was a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of panic. And I think she had done something immediately that she was like, what the fuck? Yeah. So this is where it gets super funny. So this dude graduates the Q course. Mm-hmm. And now this guy is a special forces guy. He's having an affair with my wife. And it happened twice. That time, and then I left for Ranger School, and he flew her back out of North Carolina another time. And while moves back to Austin, we're in San Antonio. And then anytime I like go on a trip or something, she's like meeting him in San Marcos now, apparently. So it's super weird because this dude graduates the Q course, and this is the part where I kind of have issues with like, how, at what point do you have to like, okay, I'm probably doing something I shouldn't be doing, and I shouldn't have X, Y, and Z, and some other stuff. But what ended up happening is he comes back from the Q course, and we start having conversations about him coming to my team. So this guy comes to my special forces team. It's like, man, if I'm if I'm hooking up with a guy that I know, we became best friends eventually during all this stuff, but I'm probably not coming to a special forces team.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just gonna be like, God,
It gets so much worse, though.
it gets super, okay, I get a little bit worse, I guess. So now,
So much worse.
some of the most important things in my life, right? My special forces team, which is a career in a regiment that I'm very committed to, and then my wife, which I'm very committed to, and he he deploys to Afghanistan. He hops on a deployment, and during that time, him and my other buddy Kyle and all of us are talking about opening a gym together. So then we all go into business together. So now we're, $250,000 deep in business.
Yep.
And so we're in the business together. He's on my special forces team, and he's having an affair with my wife. So he's kind of intermingled in everything that I kind of hold dear to my heart, for lack of better terms, which you got to kind of start looking at the individual and being like, what the fuck is going on here with this dude? Not that I'm trying to figure it out, but
he was an original partner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was 33% across the board between all of us. And it was super weird. And I think this is where I'm not like trying to understand where my wife got wrapped into all this stuff. Is it's just like, you would fucking leave, and then he would just shoot me a message, and I would just be like, she's kind of this weird creature of habit and doesn't like contention, and she'll almost do anything to stay away from it. So she's kind of got in this mode of like, I think in the beginning she was thinking like, I probably don't love my husband, maybe I love this other dude, which is, I'm sure, very common in most affairs where they're like, fuck, the grass is greener on the other side. Oh wait, oh shit, it's not. And then you're kind of in this weird spot of like, what am I doing with this thing? And I think that's kind of what it turned into. It just was like I don't want this to come out. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to keep the routine of the habit of how it started.
It's fear. I mean,
fear, a little bit of fear. Yeah.
Absolutely fear.
And I'm sure we're going to get on here, and me and Danielle will talk about this, and she'll be able to kind of, she's the woman that will bury everything to a point that like she literally can't even remember an instance about it. So there's a lot of this where she's just like, I have no idea. Which, imagine from my perspective, where I'm like, no, you're gonna know, and you're gonna remember, and you're gonna tell me this shit. Because back to that brutal honesty thing, I want to be gutted. I want to know what it is. I want to know what I'm forgiving, and I want to know all aspects of what I'm forgiving.
Me too.
I don't want it trickled.
Yeah.
I don't want the drip effect.
I feel like, though, I know you don't, but I feel like on her side of things, and I love Danielle, so I have to voice this, but I feel like she was the victim of a lot of emotional manipulation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In that situation.
Yeah, dude, I could do a 4-hour podcast on Chris.
Okay, let's not.
And the mess of that dude's individual life.
Yeah.
But that's not the point of this thing. But so I kind of understand. Again, I understand a lot of how this shit happens and how we got to where we were. And we learned from that and understood exactly what it was. And then during those 4 years, here's what's weird about it. I think a couple times a year, I would sit down with her and be like, this isn't right. We're not right. I don't know what it is. What's going on? Is there anything you want to tell me? And then those conversations started turning into, I'm not living in a relationship like this anymore. Because for me, I'm very connected to energy and emotions, and what people broadcast and put off, and I couldn't get that from my own wife.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, what? Why are we in this then? We can just be friends.
Yeah.
Why are there so many emotional holes that I'm trying to plug in with assumptions?
Yeah.
And it's like, I shouldn't have to do that in a relationship like this. Which is where I sort of started having this idea of we're just not meant to be together. Like, we had kids together and it was great, and we have this business. How do we amicably separate this thing and figure it out. So then I started having those conversations with her, like, hey, I think I'm leaving. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I'm doing this anymore. You know,
did
and here's
actually
why.
move out of a few times, right?
Yeah, I lived in the gym. This is super funny. In 2015, beginning of 2015. Oh, so here's the other thing. Dude comes back from Afghanistan. Last little bit here, sorry.
Ugh.
Dude comes back from Afghanistan, has nowhere to live, so I give him a place to live in my house. And now the guy moved into my house. So the guy's living in my house. Him and my wife are having an affair in my house now, around my kids,
Yeah.
in my business, on my special forces team. So it turned into this super heavy thing that, like, when I first heard that she had an affair with him, it was like, okay, I can figure that out. I can get through that. I'm strong enough for that. And then when I woke up the next day and understood the timeline of it, I couldn't separate it from the ideas of the way I defined myself. And that broke me into a spot that that I still have a hard time describing. I've been trying to write about it. I've been trying to pinpoint certain emotions and connections around certain things and why they felt the way they were. And it's just a complicated, layered, heavy issue that it came to a head. We'll get back to that in a second. But
can I just say though that like at this time, Dave and I met you guys about that time, like 2015.
Yeah, when it ended. Yeah, right when it ended. Mm-hmm.
And from all outward aspects, you guys still looked like you were in love, like you were a couple.
Yeah.
Like Dave worked for you for 2 years, and I had zero clue that you guys were having issues.
And here's the deal, man. When people say we're having issues, it's normally like you're coming home, you're ignoring each other. There's no conversations. The kids kind of know there's some awkwardness. You guys go in your bedroom. You guys fight.
Yeah.
No, man. We were at the gym and laughing and best friends. And we would come home and we were raising our kids and having amazing dinner. We would cook dinner together as much as we possibly could. Mm-hmm. We were having sex every night. And so you started looking at this whole thing. And for me, it's like, okay, these are physical, unconnected things. Do we have connections with our kids? Sure. But that missing link between what was happening to us on a deep emotional connection level just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I knew that, and I always felt that. And the thing was, we were going through these routines of habits of what we created in our marriage. And this is in the peak of like my hormone issues and my stress levels and all these other kind of things. I was sleeping maybe 1 to 2 hours a night. You know, I'm $500,000 in debt on this business. I can't figure out what the fuck's going on with my wife. I mean, I'm like, it's really hard to look back on now and I never even told my wife a lot of this stuff until everything started coming out. And I was like, dude, I would fucking cry for like 2 or 3 hours a night just being like, what the fuck are you doing? What am I doing? And I wasn't honest enough or brave enough or had even enough courage to even have the conversation anymore. And I was just like, fuck it, man. I'm just going to run hot for as long as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like at some point in this time, you had started coaching me and we were having conversations around this stuff and relationships and everything. And nothing appeared to be wrong. Like, I didn't know you were sleeping at the gym. I didn't know you were sleeping in your car. Like, things seemed good. And so it's so hard for me to grasp the fact that like as good as your relationship was, it was still in
Isn't it amazing
at that point.
How human beings can put on a face and be just internally fucked up, which is so weird to me because I didn't feel fucked up, but I knew something was wrong. So it was super weird. Once I uncovered all the layers, then I was like, "Oh man, I'm super fucked up."
Yeah,
we're so fucked up.
Let's dive deep.
Yeah, but at that time I didn't. And this is the other part that is very strange, and I think one of the most important things that I talk about with a lot of people is that time I left and when I was living in the gym, Daniel came into the gym on a Saturday to talk, and when we were in that moment together, I knew it was over. It was like over, and I think we both knew initially her walking in the door, that was the conversation of like, how do we divvy up our assets and our businesses and car payments, and what are we going to do with these kids, and am I moving out? Like, what the fuck? Like, that was, I think, what we both felt was going to happen. And as we sat down and just did the best friend conversation that we always do, and we kind of start peeling back layers, there's always that little small ember of, there's no way I can spend the rest of my life without this person, whether it's an intimate relationship or not. And so I think we both really started struggling with that issue in that moment of like, no, wait a second. I really like being around you, and I don't want to not have that every day, and I really don't want X, Y, and Z. And I think it was a Saturday afternoon in the gym. Yeah, and we defiled that couch like crazy. So, yeah, physical attraction never a problem, I don't think. But yeah, it was a weird moment. And when it was over and we were just sitting there chilling, I think we were just watching Netflix or something. We just didn't really want to go home. It was like this neutral space, even though it was at the gym, but there was nobody there, and it was kind of like this weird neutral ground. Where I kind of had this moment of like, fuck it. And this may sound super weird, and I'll explain. I'll kind of extrapolate a little bit, but I just was like, fuck her, fuck this gym, fuck all these people. Like, every waking moment of my day is to serve somebody else. Every second, from the moment I got up, was checking texts and is the gym open? And are these people getting what they need? You know, are my kids getting off to school? What does Danielle need right now? Let me jump through hoops for her so she knows I love her. Da 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 da. And there was all these things and I didn't realize how much resentment and animosity I had towards a life that I created. And that was one thing that I fully embraced, is that I always know that I created every situation that I'm sitting in, and I just have to sit back and then make the conscious effort of like, am I going to accept this creation for what it is, or am I going to like try to unfuck it or fix it or whatever? And that it was probably one of the best days of my life. And fun fact of the day here, the affair is still going on during this time. So this dude starts getting.
Was it?
Yeah. It might. I think it was like a couple weeks prior. It might have ended or something, but it was very close to around that time.
Okay.
And I think that moment was where Danielle was like, "What the fuck am I doing? This dude right here is," and I think she kind of had this just kind of snapshot of like, this guy's given everything that he has for everybody around him, including myself. And what am I doing to him? Like, how, if I do actually truly love this guy, like how can my actions be more in line with that? And I think that's where she kind of maybe, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there. Chris started getting caught with a bunch of people in our gym and coaches, and the whole thing just started kind of unraveling around him. And he comes to me one day and he's like, "Man, I'm taking this job in Africa for a year," and he just hops on a plane and disappears. And I'm like, "Yeah, man, please go." Like,
yeah.
You're destroying our business. You're having all these issues, and like, I genuinely, as a friend, want you to figure this shit out. And this just isn't the situation for you. Like, let's remove you from it. And yeah, super weird. Super weird. But here's what's funny about this. I keep saying that. This is just a funny story. I kind of knew.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
I didn't know that you'd been checking phone records.
Yeah, that in 2011, I kind of knew that something might have happened. And I think I was so desperate to keep that relationship that I would have ignored anything.
Yeah.
At the time.
Absolutely.
So I kind of knew. So when Chris's wife called me this year in December and just kind of laid this shit out.
Christmas Day, right?
No, it's 3 days. 21st, December 21st, 2017. 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, so he leaves, and at that moment where I just was like, what makes me more authentic? What can I do about myself that actually gets me into a space where I don't resent my own life? And maybe that resonates with a ton of people. I hope it does, because I know there's a lot of people that are just kind of living every aspect of their life for something else or someone else or an idea of something else that's not necessarily what they believe in. So I think a lot of us do come to that point in our life. And that one, I didn't give a fuck if she left. I didn't care if my gym closed down. I didn't. And it was funny is that when I did that, that's when everything got better. That's when Danielle ended the affair, and she opened a certain level of connection that I had been fucking waiting for 15 years. And I would have taken 90% less of that at that time, but she gave me a whole lot more. So that sparked a whole lot of hope in where I thought we could go and what I envisioned in my head as like a very committed relationship. And then the gym just started to like kind of move in a different direction. And
this is the Danielle and Dave that I know.
Yeah, this is what most people over the past few years would probably be like, oh man, these people got their shit together.
Yeah.
But in secret, do we really have our shit together? Which is funny. So we lived that for 2 years. Transitioned our gym into an OPEX facility, an individual design, because I wanted to be more intimate in people's individual journeys in life and fitness, and it's what OPEX, and I talk about this even on some OPEX videos where I say fitness saved my life, and it's a weird thing is in the way that like James Fitzgerald and all of OPEX HQ and their idea of what fitness is and the way they deliver it just resonated with me, and it gave me this weird outlet to actually explore what the fuck I wanted to do with my life and who I actually was. And so I always pay them a ton of credit in that regard, to the sense that it altered who I was in a matter of a week, and gave me a place to search for information and ideas, and then also connect to an individual that was very intuitive with life, in James Fitzgerald. And Danielle will tell you that too. She's like, yeah, that moment that I knew that I was going to fall back in love with this guy was the moment that he started going down that rabbit hole for himself. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of like really big foundation for us there, which is, even though I'm out of the gym business and I don't own those gyms anymore, I still have an OPEX, an individual design coach in Marcus, Philly. I had a consult with him today, and it's still out of the 3 cornerstones of what I believe will bring peace in people's life is the third of the equation, which is honor your body. And so I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but more into this timeline. Now we're transitioning our gyms. We move. I partner with another guy. He comes out here, guy named Carl Hardwick. So it was me, Chris, and Carl Hardwick, because our other buddy Kyle kind of left the gym, went a little bit silent. And then Chris's wife calls me in this year in December and kind of tells me there's like 10 or 15 girls where she's like, pretty sure Chris is having an affair on me. I'm trying to get a divorce. He won't sign the papers, blah, blah, blah. And this is like a 2 or 3 hour conversation. And then at the end of that conversation, she says, and then there's something Chris needs to own up to you one day, but that's between you and him. And as soon as she said that, without a doubt in my mind, I knew something happened with him and Danielle. So Danielle, which is funny, Danielle comes out, and I always have these conversations in my truck because it's like super easy to talk and it's on speakerphone. Well, she comes out, and I don't realize she comes out as I'm talking to his wife and sees his wife's name on my truck phone thing and calls Chris immediately and is like, dude, what did you tell your wife? So they kind of formulated this plan of like, he's like, I only told her that it was just that one night and da-da-da-da-da. So I brought it up that night. I was like, hey, is there anything you want to tell me? Da, 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 da. And at this point, we're pretty honest with each other. So there's not a lot of stuff that I don't know about minus this affair. So I come back in the next day. Well, I shoot an email out to her that morning. This is how fucked up our generation is, right? Like we're having a conversation that night.
I know. It's so weird that this is...
No one can find the courage to just be like, here's what it is. I'm going to ask you bluntly. I kind of just tiptoed around it a little bit like, hey, Chris was a little off. Is there anything you want to tell me? Got her in an uncomfortable position to where I could tell there was something there. And she didn't admit to anything. So I shoot out a fucking email, like a fucking weird generation that we're in. But that's where everybody grabs their fucking nuts, right? Like, oh, I can sit behind a keyboard and this is so super impersonal and I can just fire it and then just fucking sit back and wait for the consequences, right? And there's some benefit there because I think it benefited us because it allowed us to like formulate our thoughts on what we were doing on paper and then just like send the shit out and just like see what happens.
It's that detachment from emotion. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to look somebody in the eye and
You
say
don't
the
have to
hard
see their
things.
body language. You don't have to feel their energy. And I didn't, fuck, I wanted to know, but I didn't want to know. It's a weird space to be in. So yeah, I come back in that night and I'm getting out of the shower and she's in the bed and I can tell she's stewing. She's trying to find the courage to read her email to me. She wouldn't even send the email to me. And I come in and I'm like, hey, do you get my email this morning? How weird is that? And she goes, yeah, and I want to read something to you. And as soon as she said that, I was like, fuck, man, get dressed.
Yep.
And I just started putting on my clothes because I know what's coming. And I know me, my earlier days and my temper and my anger. I'm a master drywall dude. I've repaired fucking 50 doors. I've broken my hands. I don't even know how many times. Because back to the stuff as a kid, like I enjoy physical contact and release of pain and anger on something physical.
Yep.
Never on people per se. Like I've never hit my wife. I've never had any like weird, put hands on her in a weird way. Even though I'm always willing to admit that like, yeah, I wanted to full mount you and bash your fucking face in. You know? Like
Yeah.
I acknowledge, and people will be like, well, that's psychopathic behavior. It's like, no. It's the guy that acts upon that. The guy that admits that like we do have angry tendencies is just attached to his emotions and is willing to confront them and be like, oh, that's not right, dude. Let's move that to the side.
That's a whole interesting conversation that we've had before about the perception of you as a person based on things that you say like that. And your reality that's just a little bit different than everyone else's reality.
Yeah, I think people, when I say that stuff, they're waiting for me to execute on it.
Yeah,
they're waiting for action.
Yeah.
And I'm fully aware that I am capable. I think a lot of us are capable of some of that stuff. But capable doesn't mean it's going to happen or you will. What I mean is I'm physically and mentally capable to hurt and cause harm. I think it's been proven over 16 years, a little bit. And I fully acknowledge that about myself as an individual and willing to defend what I feel is right, what's honorable, where integrity sits in this life. And I fully believe that there's got to be consequences to an extent. Mm-hmm. And there's a part of human biology that consequences is delved out in physical punishment, and people react to that. And here's the thing about it on a psychology perspective is that it's a temporary fix. And that's one thing that I've learned when I let go of breaking shit in my house, because I realized it was a temporary expression of like, this is how I feel. Oh, that didn't get anywhere long term. That didn't solve anything long term. And so that's the problem with physical punishment, like spanking your kids and these other kind of things. It's like you get that initial.
It's memorable,
but then it doesn't build a long-lasting foundation of whatever lesson you're trying to teach.
And the emotional impact long-term is negative.
Is not good, yeah. So, and I fully acknowledge that kind of stuff, but as soon as she read and me and Chris had an affair that night, I grabbed my pistol. I unloaded my pistol because I was like, I know how bad I want to escalate some shit to an extent, because now you're thinking the justification in your head of what these people deserve, which is so weird because people don't deserve anything. Such a weird thing to say, oh, we deserve happiness and you deserve this and you deserve. It's like life doesn't give a fuck about what you deserve. It just doesn't, man. Like, do you think the fucking kids that were born to starving moms in Africa and have to work for these militias fucking deserve that? Life didn't give a fuck that they were born and put them in that timeline in their life. It does not care. And so there was part of me that understood that evolution of mankind and the emotions around it. And then there was part of me that was like, don't fucking snap. Eliminate all this shit that's going to put you in a bad position kind of thing. Because I knew it, that, and I made a conscious decision. I was like, I am going to fucking destroy my house.
Do you remember, though, it wasn't at this point, but it was later on in this story when you were so mad at us as your friends and family around you at the time, because people were worried that you were actually going to go out and and hunt this guy down or
Yeah, and they should have.
hurt yourself.
Yeah, because here's the deal, man. Fucking fate, man. Fate, manifest destiny, karma. Maybe karma circled back and gave me a gift. And I acknowledge that gift because I told Danielle on a couple of different occasions, I was like, dead serious. So fucking bizarre to think about and even admit, and we're going to put this out to the world, but I'm going to spare you, but I'm going to fucking murder this guy today. So premeditated,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like this conversation that I was like battling in my own fucking head of like, dude, your kids, your fucking friends, your family, there's a lot of people that care about you. You got this wife here. She's trying to fix this shit. She's looking for your forgiveness. And all you can care about
It's vengeance.
is vengeance, man.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's completely human, though. I mean,
It's consuming.
when you came to talk to us about this stuff, when
Yeah.
we first found out it happened, that everyone's initial reaction is, "How did you not kill him or her?"
Which is so weird, right? Like we all have this in our heads of like, that's totally acceptable. But if I were to do it, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life
Yep,
in prison, right?
exactly.
It's like we all agree that it's like okay subconsciously in a weird way, which is not.
It's
But we do start rationalizing shit in our head, which was where I was at. I had rationalized to a point. I had done the kind of like cost analysis on this thing. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't gonna like just fucking sit around and wait to get captured. This is how fucking crazy. And obviously, this is the SF dude's like, okay, we're gonna do this, and where can we go, and what fucking countries or have asylum? It's like you start going through these weird plans in your head of like, it sounds so bizarre, but when you're that fucking hurt, nothing makes sense, and you do some wacky, crazy shit. And that was just one of those things where he just happened to be on Christmas vacation with his wife in Canada, trying to salvage his marriage because far enough away. I waited at his fucking house for him to come home, and he never came home.
Yeah.
What a fucking wonderful gift that it just worked out how it did.
Yeah. So we're talking about the irrational side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the logical side of it that you actually did follow through on was also completely shocking to the rest of us.
Yeah. You know what? I knew this topic was going to come up. So I did have an attempt at suicide. And it was in February. And the thing about it was, and I had these conversations with Dan. This is so weird. The only person that brought me peace and the only person that could control me was the person that fucking tore me apart.
Yep.
So you're sitting in this room and you have, this is how I know hate and love exist in the same space sometimes. Because, fuck, I wanted to kill that chick. I would have regretted it, and I don't like regret. I would have regretted it for the rest of my life, but I found a ton of reasons to justify it. But she also was the only person that I knew could bring me peace in this life based on everything that happened, which was so weird. Even though in the moment, now I know that the peace only relied in myself internally. I didn't need her. But I was selling myself this idea. And here's the danger about that. So I was selling myself that was the idea, but I wasn't getting shame and remorse from her. None. It was just like she's fucking crying and shit, but then like she was just going to work like nothing was wrong, and she was going to the gym like nothing was wrong, and it was just like,
yeah,
dude, can I get some kind of representation that you're fucking ashamed of what you did, that you have some kind of remorse?
Can we talk about the whole like how you guys talked about this with the rest of us in the gym community and your business?
Yeah.
Because this was pretty bizarre to me.
What do you mean?
I mean, so I think that day that I don't know, it was after Christmas, and you guys.
Yeah, it came in January.
Yeah.
I think it was January sometime.
And you guys decided to have a meeting with everyone that worked at the gym.
Yeah, we just wanted to have a meeting with the coaches to clear the air.
And just put everything on the table.
Yeah.
And I mean everything. Like but Danielle stood up and told her story. I didn't
tell her. I just was like, hey, I got to go to the gym. I don't want to tell everybody what the fuck's going on so we can just be in peace. Because here's the deal about fitness. It is a fucking gossip factory, man.
It is.
And if you don't tell it exactly what it is, people will formulate and fill the holes in the way they see fit.
Absolutely.
And what was happening, and here was my rationale behind that. What was happening is Danielle was getting the 6 degrees of bacon of all the conversations that was happening in the fitness community in North Austin. And it was like, oh, this happened and that and da 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 da. And at the time, she was doing everything she could do to protect me because she was like, this guy has lived with absolute honesty and integrity in everything he does, and I just fucking destroyed him, and he's going to take the brunt of this.
And you did.
To an extent.
But she took a lot of it.
Yeah, no, I do. For her to stand up and just be like, this is what the fuck I did, and I own that shit.
It was amazing.
Was super amazing. And there were moments where I lost sight of that for sure.
Yeah.
But what I didn't like is that she was trying to stand up for me and was having these weird conversations that were leaking into her. So I was like, fuck it. I'll just put it out there. I don't care. And the other flip side is that realistically, the 3 owners were me, Danielle, and Chris.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, every one of these owners are created this fucking really weird situation for our employees. And so I just wanted everybody to understand that, like, this shit's going to be super weird right now, and it's going to be super uncomfortable for everybody. And here's why.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how to sugarcoat that shit. I don't want to come in here and just be like, I got some personal shit going on. You guys won't see me for a month.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows that her and Chris fucking had an affair, man. Like.
Yeah. At that point, though, he'd been gone for so long.
Yeah.
Like, we'd been a part of the gym for a couple of years.
Yeah, he was in and out
and
for
I'd
sure.
never really seen him very much. But like that day that you guys had that gym coach meeting, you texted me and said, hey, I just told something to my coaches. Tell Dave it's okay to tell you. And when he told me, the conversation in our household was like, holy shit. It was so left field that had happened that...
Hey, you're telling me.
Yeah, we couldn't absorb it for one thing. But also...
it took me a solid week to understand what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, but you guys came in together to that meeting. And so at that point, we talked. Like, you guys came over to our house that night.
Yeah.
And you said to us, I want you to give her grace in this. Like, you didn't say it like that, but you said, we are going to work this out. We're here together. This is not the end.
Yeah, I didn't want this is so fucking bizarre too, right? Like, in your head, you want to fucking kill these 2 people. But then when you're rational, genuine, because I've been absolutely in love with that woman since the moment I proposed to her. I wouldn't have done it, right? So, it was weird. I didn't give a fuck. Here's the thing, dude. I'm the most unguiltable person you'll ever meet. And I joked with you this all the time. I'm like, dude, become unguiltable, man. It's the most freeing thing on the planet. I don't give a fuck what people say about me. But Danielle does, man. She absorbs people's energy. It affects her. She puts off an amazing energy and changes the perspective of people just by her pure being and her being around, which is an amazing attribute. And I didn't want her to... I understood what it was, and I was working towards peace, and I didn't want people putting energy on her that was, 1, not justified, 2, was none of their place or their business.
Yeah.
But I wanted her to be reassured that the people that matter to her most and that she valued most in life, in a weird way, had my permission to forgive her.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody thought, like, fuck, man, are we Team Dave or are we Team Danielle?
Yeah.
And
it was a real fear for a little bit.
In my head, I'm like, not even a fucking question. Yeah. Not even a question. But she's getting voted off the island. Like, how is this even a conversation? But I didn't want people to feel that, like, that internal struggle. I guess this is like one of those weird things on how unbelievably selfless sometimes me and her can be, in the sense that, like, here we are in the biggest, most traumatic sadness pivot point in our entire life, and we're trying to make sure everybody else doesn't feel uncomfortable around it. Yeah. Good or bad, I don't know. We just didn't want people to feel uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, I mean, there was tons of discomfort around it.
How do you avoid it?
There's still discomfort around it when we talk about it right now. But I think you giving us that ability to still love the 2 of you together as a unit. I mean, at this point in time, and still to this day, Dave and Danielle are one person in my head. Like, it's very hard to separate you 2.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. I mean, you're just you're the Halls.
Yeah.
And you've always been that way to us. We've always looked up to you as a couple, not knowing all the stuff had gone on, but now knowing it even more so. But
Yeah.
you giving us the ability to still love the two of you as a couple really helped us in our relationship with you guys moving forward.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like even in the deepest part of the pain that you guys were going through, you were giving people gifts. And it was the gift to forgive our friends and move forward and help them get back together and stay together and build up your relationship.
Yeah, and that was, man, it was a fucking heavy time, man. I even thinking about some of that stuff, and trying to piece together how some of it unfolded, whether it be stepping out of the business or certain people, because there were certain people in my life that I asked for certain things, and I allowed conversations to happen and stuff, and I don't want to call it betrayal or whatever, but it was just energy that I was really hoping that they would push in a different direction. And this is another one of my faults too, where I have expectations around certain
Yep.
things that I may not necessarily verbalize that I think is just common sense and normal human behavior. And the perfect example I can use is like, I don't expect my wife to fuck another dude.
Yeah.
Like, not a weird expectation, but it always leads to disappointment. When you put expectations on certain situations that one are unspoken, two may be realistic and attainable for you as an individual, but maybe not necessarily the people standing in front of you, it will always lead to disappointment. And I have a ton of relationships, especially in the gym business, former partners, former coaches, and regardless of what all of them think, I fucking love all of them to death. I wish that, one of my biggest hopes in life is fucking 2 years from now we're all eating dinner together, joking about it and laughing about it, and having a nice glass of fucking bourbon around each other.
And
Because those were points in our lives and relationships that taught us a ton of shit. It just so happens that we weren't meant to be in a relationship either professionally or personally in an everyday aspect or whatever, which is
that's-
okay.
Your reaction to that is also very strange to me because I am very human in the sense that
Yeah.
you fuck with my friends, you fuck with me, and I
Yeah.
felt it so intensely.
You want to be grudgeful for sure.
Yeah.
And I get that. I understand why people have a grudge towards me, whether I'm a strong personality. I have a certain idea of like, if I'm willing to go all in, assume all the risk, there's a certain level of like, I'm just gonna fucking do it my way, man. Sorry. I'm sorry. And that it hurt a lot of people. And I created a lot of situations now that I look back on, and like there were certain pockets of culture that I'll give you a perfect example. I had a coach, female coach, in the SF world, and these are some things where I'm starting to realize, not starting to, but I've come to realize that like they don't intermingle in certain circles.
Yeah.
Like blood in the water of like sharks and picking on people.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode well with certain people. And then you add an uncomfortable topic on top of that, i.e. sex. It makes it even worse. So we had this weird culture at this one point where we just like kept picking on this one coach about her sex life because she was really prude, and it made her really uncomfortable. And it was like, it got to a point where we created such a habit around it that we didn't even understand that it was uncomfortable for her anymore.
Yeah.
What a fucking embarrassing, crazy culture that I led. And I fully am aware and understand that for what it was. But it's like, it's just stuff like that where I understand now why that coach may never fucking talk to me again for the rest of her life. Even though
I think
in
she-
my head, I have this like, fuck, man, I gave you this laundry list of shit. Like,
Yeah.
how are we not trying to repair and salvage and some other stuff? Is like, at what point are things too far gone or not far enough, or fuck it, it just doesn't even matter.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
always taught us though in the gym and in just life coaching that you give to people. You always make the cup analogy
Yeah.
of like how much you can fill your cup. And it's always been very impactful to me because my cup is so small. And I can get filled up really fast and stress boils over and goes crazy. Your cup is so freaking
That
big.
that's a James Fitzgerald thing, by the way.
Is it
just
really?
just so everybody knows, that's his
Okay.
resilience cup, and
Sorry.
he does a little. I stole that. And
I mean,
maybe
I've
he's
heard other people
yeah,
use
maybe
that
he stole it
analogy.
from somebody, who knows, but that's where I got it from.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well,
but how true is it?
it's super true. And I feel like because your cup is so big and because you can put up with so much, sometimes people and you probably don't understand the difference between people's capacity for
Yeah.
emotional understanding.
Yeah, I think it's another
coping.
really. I think this year has taught me. That's one of the big things, I think, is understanding my level of resiliency, how high it was, why I can, be a full blown entrepreneur and an SF dude and deploy all the time and be a family guy.
Yeah, you haven't even talked about your third business. So,
Wait, which one? Wait, wait.
tattoo.
Oh, the tattoo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started tattoo. I picked that up a long time ago. I'll get into that here in a minute, I guess. We'll kind of mess with that a little bit. But back to the timeline. Where was I at? Oh, so when everything got, we got super sidetracked there. When everything got really super heavy, there was a whole bunch of aspects going on there, and I've really tried to understand. Look, suicide is a fucking uncomfortable thing, and the reason I know or somewhat familiar with this thing is that my brother killed himself back in 2000. I don't want to fuck this up. 2009, September of 2009. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that leads up to that. That's a whole crazy conversation on, death of one of his wives that he was married to in a car accident, and having CT really bad because during that car accident split his dome open, broke his neck. So the management of hormones, and already dropped out of high school when he was in the 9th grade, dealing drugs, and and this is where I have a hard time with the conversation around environment. Can be a predictor of why people are fucked up, or
We've talked about this a lot.
yeah, or why they're. I don't want to turn it into like a race conversation or whatever. Just know that the thing is, and they're like, oh, well, you're using one example. You're using one example, and I'm like, okay, but what we really need to highlight is the possibility. Like, it's possible to grow up me and my brother were side by side our entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I ended up sitting here today, successful in life. I hit my 18-year marriage this year. My son's 17, my daughter's 12. I've had successful businesses in and out, still run a successful business now. And he killed himself in 2009 from being a drug dealer and murdering people and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like, what was it? Was it just because the individual just decided to, I choose this route and this dude chose that route? So do I not want to accept the fact that your environment will shape you, because we are pliable human beings, whether it be our emotions and some other things, and what are we genetically built for, and how much can we handle, and how do we accept lessons as they come, and so forth and so forth. I think that that's totally a factor of it, but we all still have this kind of, I think you just need to create the honesty of like, no, I knew it was possible to, let's say I'm my brother. I knew it was possible to get exactly where my brother, if we could talk to him today as a ghost or something, right? I knew it was possible to get to where my brother was because he was an example.
Yeah.
And he did it, and he was there. I just chose not to. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't care how many people I left by the wayside. The love for my daughter wasn't great enough. The love for my parents wasn't enough. I had a wife that tried to stay with me because he remarried. And it was like, that stuff just wasn't powerful enough for me, and I didn't give a fuck.
That's your brother.
Yeah. It's like, what if that's what it was? Like, if that's I don't know. It's such a weird.
I don't think you can simplify it down to that.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing is, like, I think that's one of the things that the beauty of how I navigate through life is just really oversimplifying things. and not making it more complicated than it actually really is.
Yeah.
Because he had,
Which is infuriating, by the way.
I think for some people it does get infuriating. And I'm trying to figure out how to have those conversations and articulate it different to where it isn't, it's like, oh, how do you create honesty? It's like, just tell the truth. And they're like, okay, thanks, Dave. Like, got it. But that's a weird thing. There's this combination of, one, I'm unguiltable. I don't give a fuck about almost anything. Not in the sense that I don't care. I don't want to see people succeed. I just don't give a fuck what people's thoughts are towards me around my actions and other stuff. And I don't, fear motivates me more than it debilitates me, I guess, for lack of better terms. It's like a chip on my shoulder of like, oh, you can't fucking do that. Okay, well, okay, I think I can. And the affair, for an example, I'm reading all these things. It's like, 90 days for trauma, and this is where you really start this. And I was like, fucking do it in a week.
Yeah.
I'll do it in a week.
Did not.
It did not work out like that. It's about 90 days, probably, I guess.
Yeah. Till the first breakthrough.
Yeah, I think there were moments where I had two personalities to an extent there, where I went into one and I was like, fuck it, what the fuck? It's madness. I don't know what's going on. I'm too clouded. There was a lot of dishonesty there in my own shit, that I was just telling myself. She was doing this because of that, and this because of you, and you did this, and and I started like carrying all this guilt of my role in her decisions. And I think we need to embrace our actions and how they may play a role into it, but you're not responsible for the decisions that come out of it. And I owned all of that shit. So it got to a point in February where I wasn't seeing shame and remorse of what I expected.
Yeah.
Gotta fucking be honest there, right? And I didn't want to hurt anymore. Man, I was fucking hurt. It's even hard to think about sometimes because if I time travel essentially in my own head of where I was at then, man, it still fucking hurts.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt currently unless I go to that space and actually live in it for a minute and try to understand what it was, which I very conscious, and I still try to do, because I want to understand the emotions and the steps and the way my system reacts to certain things that may get me to a certain point. So I want to at least acknowledge that those things exist, and I've got to try to figure out what they are as signs moving forward, as lessons learned, so I can either identify them in my kids or my wife, or if myself is going down this own path, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say
so
something.
I don't know. At this point in time, I feel like I didn't know you very well, and I definitely didn't know Danielle very well. And we were friends, but only to the extent of like not.
Yeah, some dinners here and there.
Yeah,
and,
not like soul conversations. So, but at this time, I know how I struggle with depression, and I started seeing signs in you as my coach, and I started worrying a lot about you in particular. And it was interesting to see you, interesting and also like very scary to see you go through that progression day to day of like wake up and text you and go, where are you at today? And it could be a completely different place from the day or hours before.
Which, now that you bring that up, I was telling myself I was okay, but not acknowledging what I was actually feeling at the time.
Absolutely.
Which a bunch of us do, right? So we're creating lies around what we are because we don't want to deal with the fear and the sadness and the tension of whatever it was, and actually go through the process of healing from trauma.
Yeah.
It's weird because as much as I've been fucking blown up or shot at or fucking killed people or whatever the case may be, most people would be like, that's fucking traumatic.
Yeah. I like how you just throw that out there too.
That's how my brain works, right? But to me, I'm like, no, let's just use that as an example. I was like, no, that makes perfect sense. Like those fucking dudes are infringing on the freedoms of other people and oppressing whatever X, Y, and Z. And whether people want to get into the politics of like, oh, we're only there for oil and da 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 and economy and all this other kind of bullshit, and it's a war factory. Okay, fine, great. That's not my role in this thing. My role is go here and then now assess the situation which has been presented to you and go, well, put me put me in downtown Austin. I can find bad people.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. Like that's just the job that we do. So it's like you put me in an area and you're like, oh, fucking find bad people. And so when I started looking at that process of it, I'm like, okay, is there a little girl today? Let's fast forward fucking 12 years from now. That was 10 at the time. That's now 23. That looks back and been like, man, them fucking dudes that came here and fucking smoked that one dude because he was a piece of shit, because he was doing X, Y, and Z, and gave me an opportunity to do whatever. Like, that's fucking peace for me. That's it.
Yeah.
So those things make sense to me.
Yeah.
When my wife said she had an affair with my best friend, special forces teammate, business partner, roommate, it didn't make sense to me. And I couldn't figure out a way in my own head, with some honesty, because I just was fucking lying to myself about all kinds of shit, why it made sense. And even till this day, she's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
It just doesn't.
And that was the first time in my life where I really kind of looked at someone and was like, life doesn't make sense sometimes. I always had kind of found a way to like talk myself into some common sense things of like, oh, that's why that shit's like that, or that's why that happened. And this one, I couldn't.
There's no pattern recognition.
I couldn't like, that makes sense. Doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So then, again, trying to find where you fit in this whole thing. And I think there was a couple of other pieces where like I started to hear stories from the unit and stuff where like Chris was in there and was just like, fuck it. Like no remorse. No. So the two people that I thought had absolute love for me weren't even showing remorse for the shit that they had done. And so that kind of started eating at me a weird little bit. So on top of the pain and the trauma of the whole thing, I couldn't fucking figure out what the fuck was going on. I didn't care about it. And this is a sad part. And some people, and so that's why I brought up my brother a little bit earlier. Is like, I understand how you can get to a point where the love of your own children don't even matter, which is fucking sad to say, man. But like, I didn't give a fuck about being a father at that point. I didn't care about the people that were in my life and cared about me or whatever. I even like, you kind of have these ideas in your head, like, oh, fuck, if this happens and fucking so-and-so is going to be really sad and they're going to be sad. And it's, eventually I was just like, I don't fucking care if they're sad. I'm fucking sad. Fuck.
Really? Did you actually have that thought process?
Yeah. And here's what's weird about it. So I started kind of thinking about this thing. One, the number one main factor hands down, without a doubt, was I didn't want to fucking hurt anymore. And no matter what I did, and no matter what thought processes I went through, and no matter what conversations I had, and no matter how many times I sat in my wife's arms and fucking bawled my eyes out and slept so my daughter's was amazing during that thing. I can't even think of how many times I fucking slept in her arms. And just like fucking like a 12-year-old consoling this 38-year-old dude and just fucking crying in her arms. And she was just amazing about it.
She was amazing.
I couldn't figure out the process to not hurt anymore. And so with that, I had gotten to a point where I became so fucking numb about everything. I sat down with Danielle that night, and this now starts leading into, this is what's so weird about, at least in my situation, I'm not saying this is everybody's stuff, but there is a point where it snaps. Like it just fucking snaps, and you're like, well, that was it. I was kind of there, and I'm flirting with it, and I'm looking at it. And then you're like, oh, there it was. Okay, fuck it. And mine was the night prior. And this is what I was talking about with my wife, Danielle. This is an important lesson to learn if you're ever in these situations. But I sat down that night, and this is a source of contention for Danielle, and something where I'm sure she has a ton of regret around. But I hope she isn't harboring regret around that thing, but she eventually just was like, I don't, I don't know what else to do. And I think she was in a moment of like helplessness. So I totally understand it looking at it now, but I literally told her exactly how my day was going to go.
Did you really?
I was like, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go meet with the CID investigators. I'm going to write my sworn statements. I'm going to pack my fucking bags, and I'm going to go to Red Horn, have a coffee. Like, I was fucking literally laying out my day. And I was like, and then I'm going to go fucking camp, and I'm going to fucking hang myself that night. And that was the exact conversation that I had to her. And she's like, don't talk like that. Don't talk like that. Don't talk
Yeah.
like that. In my cry for help in that moment would have been easily solved by her just not going to work the next day. And she got up and acted like nothing was wrong.
Happened.
And nothing happened. And for me, that was like that like desperation of like, dude, I'm in so much fucking pain right now. I don't want to feel it anymore. And I need somebody, the one person that I at least reached out to, that one, I'm trying to reestablish some trust with. I'm trying to see some kind of remorse. I'm trying to see unconditional love and support. And I don't give a fuck about that $300 you're going to make today.
Yeah.
I don't care.
So,
And she wasn't there. So yeah, that was a fucking weird day, because I woke up like,
mission oriented.
yeah, here we go. But here's another underlying issue. I also, and I don't even know what category this falls into, but I also wanted to teach those two motherfuckers a lesson. That's what I was thinking in my head.
It was vengeance.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? You're going to fucking cost somebody their life.
Yeah.
And you two are going to live the rest of your lives with that fucking guilt. That's how fucking hateful I became towards the action. And I let that consume me towards the people, which was super weird at that time. And as I was trying to figure out what the fuck, yeah. So that day, exactly how I went to fucking Red Horn, got some coffee, met with the CID guys. John and Chad, the owners of Red Horn, were like, "Fuck, you don't look good, bro." Brought me a sandwich. I think they were at this moment where they were in. Fucking love these two dudes to death. Shout out to Red Horn Coffee and Brewery. But
as we talk about too.
Yeah. Sorry guys, literally my last meal was at your fucking place. Yeah, and it was interesting because there was a moment where I was like, man, you can't fucking do this, man. There's a lot of people that care about it. Because John and Chad like took me to the side and were like, bro, what do you need? Are you good?
Yeah.
But at that point I was so fucking committed. So I go home, I call Lyft.
You called a Lyft?
Yeah, I called
really?
a Lyft. So here's the deal. I didn't want anybody knowing where I was at. So I started going through the SF fucking planning mode, right? So I packed my bags. I cut my fucking 550 cord. I literally have this motherfucker take me to 7-Eleven. I get a fucking Slurpee and donuts, which everybody knows me. It's my favorite shit on the planet. And I'm like, I'm going to go. And at that point, I'm fucking scared shitless. So I'm like, I'm going to eat these donuts. I'm going to have this Slurpee. And I'm going to fucking camp. And if I still feel like this in the morning, fuck it. Let's do it. And the dude, I took a Lyft out there, and my wife, anytime I was disappearing, would just get on AT&T Maps and track my phone and find out where I was at. So I called Lyft, and I turned my fucking phone off, and I left it in the room. And that dude dropped me off at the fucking little campsite thing, and I had my rucksack and my fucking Slurpee and my donuts. And I fucking hiked. I don't even know how far. And at this point, I'm a mess. I'm fucking bawling my eyes out. I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing anymore. Now everything becomes not reality.
Yeah.
It's not even fucking reality. You're just like, you're outside watching yourself, and there's all these thoughts in your heads of like, yeah, fuck these motherfuckers. Let's end this fucking pain. Let's get out of here. And then there's this like, dude, are you sure?
Yeah.
Is life really that bad? You're struggling with this conversation in your head.
I mean, there's also, do you want to take the same path your brother did?
No, it never crossed my mind.
Never crossed your mind.
I didn't even think about any of that, dude. I was so consumed in my own shit at that point. I didn't give a fuck about nothing else, man. So me, in my head, So I'm a combat diver, and I've been without air a whole bunch, and I'm like, and passed the fuck out underwater, and I'm like, super fucking peaceful. So in my head, this is how I'm rationalizing it. I'm like,
I
dude,
wondered how you got there.
yeah, hanging, suffocation, you'll pass the fuck out. That's it. You won't feel anything. It won't be that big of a deal. And then back to my like military planning shit, I'm like, gotta have some redundancy.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets super dark. Everybody, really sorry for this. And I don't think I've ever actually verbalized this to anybody. Maybe Daniel. But so I fucking tie a noose, like an actual noose, a real noose, because I know knots. I tie this fucking noose, and I pull open my Gerber fucking knife, and I'm like, all right, fucking slit and kick this fucking log out from underneath your feet. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, so there you go. Worst case, if you don't fucking suffocate to death, you'll fucking bleed out. And, you know, it wasn't going to be one. So stupid. That's like my competitive side, right? I'm not going to be one of these people that fails at suicide. To make a joke out of it, right? But fucking, what another gift right here. Thank goodness I had the fucking knife in my hand. Because I once I kicked the fucking log, I don't know how I would have been able to get my fingers in that 550, or I couldn't have reached the branch. I don't know how I would have climbed that little piece of 550 rope to get out, honestly. So the moment, so fucked up. I don't know 100% what was flashing through my head, but it's obviously a lot. It's a crazy moment because I fucking kicked the log and I'm hanging onto this knife in my hand. And as the fucking blood shuts off to my fucking brain, and you're kind of, if anybody's ever fucking been choked the fuck out, it's that like 10 to 11 seconds where you're like, whoa, fucking going down. And, but mine's attached to, if you go down, you're fucking dead, bro. And I, for some reason, just saw a snippet of the beauty of what life is. And at that moment, I gained a weird appreciation of what it actually was. Because I had now faced the darkest moment of my life. And I had actually, even though I'd been on the fucking doorsteps of death plenty of times, it wasn't, those ones were all uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And this one, I was just fucking controlling the entire situation. It was so bizarre. And it, for some reason, thank goodness I had the fucking knife in my hand. And I just reached up and fucking cut the 550 cord. And I still have it. I don't know why. I still have that. And I packed my tent up and I was fucking crying. And I couldn't fucking hold anything in my hands. And at that point, Danielle had gotten home. And notified the cops. They were like, don't leave the fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
I take it, I do know this. I sent out an email to Danielle. Just like, I fucking told you about this today. You fucking abandoned me, the guilt thing. Have a nice fucking life or whatever. And I shot Andy Reardon a text. Because I love Andy Reardon for one.
Mm-hmm.
I thanked him for just being who he was, because he's been kind of like one of the real dudes that's been like in the middle of all this shit. Come and got my guns whenever it was like getting fucking weird.
You were pissed about, but
Super
I'm so
pissed.
glad he did.
Yeah, super pissed. I'm like, I'm not a fucking psychopath. I'm fine.
You were so
but
angry.
Obviously, I'm a fucking psychopath during that time. But I shot him a text and was just like, man, just thanked him for his friendship, and was just grateful that there's somebody left in this world with a little bit of integrity and actually does what the fuck they say they're going to do. Because at that moment, he was like the only dude that I was actually getting that vibe from that I could connect with. And so yeah, I shot him that text and shut the phone off and fucking left. So he and one of our coaches were the ones that Danielle comes home. She grabs my phone. She's like, where the fuck is this dude? Like, Andy's like, well, how did he get from point A to point B? He's like, he had to have fucking called a lift or whatever. So Danielle checks the phone and sees the history of where this fucking guy dropped me off. So as I'm walking out of this campground, Andy's there.
Was he really?
Yeah, Andy and Coach Allison was there. And I it was kind of weird because it was like the last dude I wanted to see to an
Yeah.
extent, because it was like you fucking betrayed him. But I felt like I betrayed our friendship to an extent, that like I fucking brought him into all this fucking madness. But isn't that what it should be about, right?
Yeah.
To an extent. And I fucking come out of there and there's fucking cops there and shit. It's just like, are you good? You know, you got to get you some help. And at that point, I was like, I just want to fucking go home, and I just want to see my wife, dude. Like, that's all I want to do. I didn't even want to see my kids. I don't want to see anybody. I just wanted to go home and I wanted to see my wife. I wanted to apologize to her. I just wanted to I wanted to just not forget all that shit, but like, I don't know. I don't even know what it was. I was just like, kept telling the cops, I'm like, I'm fine. I just want to go fucking go home. I just want to go home. Because they probably wanted to admit me, I would imagine. But nobody knew what happened out there. All they knew was that I just fucking hiked out there and I hiked back out. Had they had known exactly what happened, they probably would have fucking stuck me in somewhere. Got some help.
Yeah.
So I get home. Danielle's obviously there and fucking distraught and whatever. And she knows this about me. Like, when I've made my mind up about something, it's not a conversation. And I was like, I just want to sleep in my own fucking bed. I just want to lay in your arms and just try to get some fucking sleep. I'm not getting help. I'm not going anywhere. Don't even fucking bring it up. And she's like, no, you're going to get help. But she like started creating this fucking argument around it. It was just so weird to me. And I'm
It's
like,
called love, Dave.
I'm
Take
like,
it.
dude, this is what I need. I'm pretty somewhat connected sometimes. I know I fucking made a misstep on this one, but in my head, that's what I was feeling at the time. Obviously, I was wrong. I was fucking totally wrong. I needed some fucking help. And she just fucking kept pushing at me. And so I left. I went to B. Barnett and Scott Spencer's house. And I don't think they knew what happened or what was going on.
I don't know if anybody knew besides Andy and Danielle.
Dude, I packed my shit to drive. In my head, I was going to Arizona to stay with my aunt and uncle. Well, actually, my cousin Max, I was going to call my cousin Max and just be like, bro, fucking 24 hours out. But I was so tired. I only made it to fucking the east side of Austin. So I text Scott and V. I was like, dude, I need a room. But they had kind of known that it's the tattoo shop that I used to work at. Super close friends of mine. And I was just like, dude, I got to I just want to fucking disappear. And like, nobody really kind of connects you to those type of people.
Yeah.
There were certain people that people knew that like, oh, if I text them, I know where he's at.
Yeah.
There's these 3 handful of people we know he's going to. Nobody, I don't think anybody knew I was going. But then Scott and B just text Andy Bird and we're like, yeah, we got fucking Dave here. He's good.
Yeah.
And I fucking crashed at their house and then woke up that morning, went home to an empty home because my wife went back to work again. She was coping though. No, for sure. I mean, that was what she needed in that moment to help deal with that situation, because it was not an easy situation to be in. It's another thing that I thank her for. I don't know that I would be strong enough to stay in that situation. And so back to my home, like destroying my home. I mean, I fucking threw my furniture through the windows. There's not a door on the hinges. I mean, I got to a point where I had broken my fucking hands and my elbows and one of my toes, and I fucking strained my knee because I was just like, now I was like kneeing doors off the fucking hinges. I mean, I'd fucking thrown the fucking stove over the fucking counter. I mean, just destroyed. And as people ask me, they're like, what the fuck? It didn't help anything. I'm like, no, it didn't help. But I've connected it to the sense that I'm a visual dude, and I had to show visually
to see the chaos,
how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Like I wanted, like, yep, that's not how I'm feeling. If I fucking destroy that wall, that might get it.
Yep.
Okay, that's not how I'm feeling. Okay, maybe it's the fridge. Oh, then it's the kitchen table. And then it would get to a point where I would be like so fucking exhausted from just my own bullshit, and I also wanted Danielle to see visually how fucking hurt I was. What a bizarre way to think about it, but that's what that was at the time. Why was I talking about breaking the house right there for a second? I got sucked into that. Yeah. So, anyways, that was that fuck, man. January, February.
That was bad.
It was fucking hard, man. It was fucking hard. Oh, anyways, the strongest woman I ever met, dude. Nobody sits in a relationship like that. This is how I know we're unbeatable now, because it's who the fuck stays in that situation?
Yeah.
Unless you are actually unconditionally, absolutely in love and genuinely want that for the rest of your life. Do you fucking sit in that madness, dude? It was fucking chaos.
There were days there where I was talking to both of you after this, because I don't think we were all that close yet. But after this, there were days when I was talking to both of you, because if you went silent for a few hours, we called Danielle. like, what's going on? Is he okay? Whatever. Yeah. And she was so deep in the pain at that point that I remember her just saying, like, I cannot feel it any more than I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah.
I can't be there in it with him right now. I had to, like, go outside and work out.
Yeah, she made some hard stands at a couple of points and was like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the option to meet me here if you actually truly want to make this work. Yeah. Because at some point you got to start questioning, like, is this dude just self-sabotaging this relationship because he doesn't have enough guts to leave it himself?
Yeah.
Which I did. I questioned that a lot. It was like, dude, am I just trying to push her enough to where she makes a decision so I can be like, not only did you fucking cheat, then you left. You know, and I did. I had those conversations in my head, and I was like, dude, you know, who is changing your diapers when you're 80? Mm-hmm. That's fucking Danielle, man. Like, the moment I would revert back to that like thought in my head, it makes me laugh and smile now because it's a funny conversation, but it's the truth. I'm going to shit my pants. I'm gonna be like, Danielle, come change my shit,
and she'll be there.
Yeah. So yeah, that was I don't know how she did it.
I don't either. Honestly.
Yeah, because I would have just fucking shot me. I'm like, fuck this guy, he's a dick. Yeah, but I didn't know how to. And I do now understand that, like, there's a lot of relationships that were damaged because of, you know, my actions and my behavior, and I don't feel bad about it. And here's why. It's what I needed to survive. Yeah. It just was what it was, man. I call it what it is, and it's what I needed to survive, and they had to make decisions for what was best for them to survive. And I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm here today where I'm at, and me and my wife are where we are today because of my actions. You know, my relationship with my kids is what it is because of my actions. Like, it just was what it was, and it was the only way I knew to survive at that time with the tools that I had gathered through an entire lifetime, and it just was what it was. And I fucking beat it, and it, you know, it's not something that I'm going to shy away from, and you know, be naive to think that it's like, you know, I'm not one more traumatic event away from. But, you know, between death and loss and infidelity and betrayal and failures, I think I've checked the box on a good bit of them. So I feel very confident that we now have the tools together to kind of just continue moving forward, and not a whole much left in this life that's, you know, capable of dragging us down for the most part. Yeah. And that's a good, amazing place to be in. And I don't know that a lot of people will ever get there. Which, if I think about it too much, it saddens me a little bit, because I wouldn't change any of our past. I wouldn't change any of the lessons that were taught. And you know, one of the first person I called, which is so weird, is James Fitzgerald. And that was the first thing he said to me. He's like, man, you've been given a fucking gift that most people are never going to experience, man. And it took me a good 60 to 90 days to understand what he was fucking talking about.
Yeah. And I
But-
remember
But yeah,
you having that conversation with Dave and I afterwards, after you talked to James Fitzgerald, and you said that to us, and Dave and I both looked at each other and we're like, he's not there right now. Like he's
no, man, I was trying to. James Fitzgerald's a fucking master at that, where he
Yeah.
plants this seed that you'll figure out the answer somewhere in the future,
yeah.
whether it's, a couple of months or a year or whatever the fuck. He just says some shit and you're like, it eats at you in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like, why did he say that? Why did he say that to me?
It was also one of those things where you felt so high on an idea, but
Yeah.
it was a positive idea. And
Yeah.
so Dave and I were like, do not dissuade him from this idea.
Yeah, it was no, but and now I'd grasp onto that wholeheartedly to an
Yeah.
extent. Because that little sort of seed just kind of exactly what you're saying. It's like one of these weird things that almost gives you just that little fraction of hope to just
Yep.
not tip past a certain point, I
Yeah.
guess, for lack of better terms.
It was a handhold. I mean, I'm thankful for it because it
Yeah,
helped you through some.
it's so weird, man. I know that there's a couple of little certain actions that could have been just done a little bit different that probably would have prevented certain things from going down, but they just are what they are. And
Yeah.
so that eventually, all of that January, February, and March kind of led to people in my life having to make self-preservation decisions, for lack of better terms. And I don't have any judgment around people making decisions in uncontrollable situations,
Yeah.
So, lost another partner out of that. And then that's when I decided that, like, man, what's best for me right now isn't the gym life anymore. And so I stepped away from our 3 gyms, and my partner moved to Scottsdale to just create a better situation for himself. And I'm thankful that all of this stuff ended up the way it did, because I think, yeah, in a perfect world, my wife not having an affair and me keeping that partnership and us being 50-50 and our families growing up together in Austin would have been a wonderful story, and it would have been an awesome ending. It's just not the reality of the situation. So to see the second best option, which is them succeeding in another city and being in another position that fulfills him and brings joy in his life, and is the second best option. So
Yeah.
that one ended, and then that sent me down this sort of path here, where I'm writing more. We keep joking about writing this book together. We don't even know what it's going to be about. Maybe this entire podcast, who knows?
Could be.
Of just trying to paint a different perspective of how the ideas and the expectations that people have to get through life.
Yeah.
It's just fucking nonsense, man.
Yeah.
And it's fucking bullshit. And so just kind of creating a library now where I can kind of dump, these 38 years of successes and failures, and all the loss and all the gain, just putting it into a place that is oversimplified, and people can just kind of read it and create some ideas in their own heads, and give them a place to, I don't know, have conversations. And
Yeah.
and then tattooing. So I'm back to, I've been a tattoo artist for 14 years now, and tattooing is weird. Everything kind of sort of circles back to this one idea that, like, if I don't create some kind of emotional connection in something I'm doing, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's a waste of time. Like, there's no growth there. There's no experience to be gained in that. So I'm out.
There's no personal fulfillment.
Yeah. And so, tattooing, I've been an artist my entire life, just doing portrait drawing work, realism, and that kind of stuff. And my tattooing has just kind of turned into that. And everybody that comes in has some cool story that connects them to why we're doing a specific piece and the conversations around that. And we can sit down and it's weird because now the people that gravitate to the type of work I do, um, are very thought provoking and want to talk about ideas. So I get in there in these 4 or 5, 6 hour conversations, and it's like, it's like tattooing Andy Reardon. I mean, we solved the world's problems in less than 90 minutes. And, but yeah, tattooing's kind of turned into this weird kind of barbershop feel where we're all just kind of going in there and just talking about life and connecting that to something visually that people can look down at. And, it's kind of came back to the forefront because it's provided me a little bit of freedom and some creative expression, still get to connect with people, and I make some money at it and it's successful. And so that'll be, I don't think as much as I've tried to push that thing away, it always comes back.
It does. I think
I
you
always
just
end
need
up
to
tattooing.
embrace it.
Yeah, I think I'm at that point. 1 to 2 days a week. I'm still not a Monday through Friday tattoo artist grind kind of guy. I'm still a by appointment only, private.
And your hands can't really take every day. But
Yeah, I'm beat up. Not beat up in a bad way. It doesn't affect my everyday life and the things that I still want to accomplish, but I can't go backpacking as much as I would like to. I can't tattoo for more than 4 or 5 hours at a time because of just my hands and
physical trauma.
yeah, stuff being broke on my back. I've got 3 herniated discs and a bunch of scar tissue in my upper ribs from breaking them on some jumps. Knees are a little funky. Collapsed all my arches both my arches at certain schools and stuff. So walking gets a little bit funky. But still overall pretty damn healthy. So I'm not complaining about it. I just got to acknowledge the fact that it limits me in certain areas. And so I can't go into a certain job, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, that's going to hurt my quality of life 10 or 15, 20 years from now. I'm not willing to make those sacrifices anymore.
That's the thing. It's the willingness.
I think I've given enough I've sort of coming to terms now that, because I've always kind of had this mentality of like, no, I can give a little more.
Yeah.
I can have a little bit more conversations. I can help a little bit more people. I can deploy a little, a couple more months this year than I did last year. And there's a lot of ego and pride involved with that, in the sense that like, you don't want to admit that enough is enough. Nobody, guys like me at least, and I'm slowly coming to terms that like, I think I've given enough. I think I've, at least in the military realm, I know I have a lot more life to live, and hopefully a lot more lives to sort of impact with these stories and the other stuff that we're talking about. But, service with a gun in my hand, I think ultimately for a lot of us, the gunfighter eventually wants to try to find some peace.
Yeah.
The timelines are just different for everybody, and turns out mine's about 16, 17 years.
Yep.
The reality of it is, though, is I still have 4 more years left, and I don't think I can dodge deployment. So I say dodge like I would dodge a fucking deployment, but the current unit I just went to right now, they were looking for volunteers, and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Like they just left this week. But they were looking for guys back in December when all this shit started coming out. So,
Yeah.
I kind of made an emotional conscious effort of like, they didn't need me, but if they were like, fuck man, sorry dude, you're the last guy, I'd probably be in Afghanistan right now.
You also
Iraq,
did talk about taking that deployment. So, I mean,
yeah, I did, man. I wanted to run. But then that seemed like my normal reaction.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day about it too. It was like, the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing the same fucking shit, hoping for a different outcome.
Yeah.
And that seemed like one of those ones where like, dude, you actually want a different outcome this time? Quit doing the same shit, man.
Yeah.
So like taking that deployment and going overseas and leaving your wife here with the kids and stuff in such a weird, delicate time, even though marriage is delicate all the time, I think, for a certain extent. I had to look for a different decision, to look for a different outcome this time. But there's some stuff in the future. We'll see.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. So that gets us to present day,
Yeah.
for lack of better terms.
So I think one of the weird things about you, and your whole life is weird to me. So I'll stop saying that at some point.
Let's just call it. We'll call it unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional. That works. Is that this past year, there's been so many emotions that you have gone through and that your wife has gone through, and that your friends and family have gone through, like watching all this and being involved in it. To me, the most amazing part is that the same people cycle back into your life and are accepted
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. And that to me has been so hard for me to handle because, like, I hold on to the pain and to the hurt that has been inflicted on your lives and that
Yeah.
has occurred in relationships. And you over and over again over the past year have just said, like, come on back in. Like, we're still friends.
Yeah. It's such a
Things.
well. Well, no, but think about it in this aspect. It's like imagine imagine the level of forgiveness that it takes to sleep in the same bed with a woman that with the idea of what betrayal is and pain and sadness and social constructs and all these other things. Like, just think of how hard it is to sit and sleep in the same, just exist in the same space with someone that did that to you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, fuck, man, the level of forgiveness that's involved with that. How easy is it to just look at somebody that used to be in your life and be like, oh yeah, fucking that one shitty comment you made, NBD. Like, it's
Yeah.
really not that big of a deal in retrospect. And then
But the thing is, you learn from shit. Like, anybody else gets hurt that badly and they build walls. You got
Yeah.
hurt that badly and you destroyed all the walls.
Yeah, I don't want no part of those things, man. Here's I talk about this a lot with people too, is about being complacent and being content in what you have. Eventually, so what ends up happening is you have these traumas and sadness in your life that you have to adapt and overcome. And then that new level of whatever you are, whatever you transcend into, becomes this new thing, and it's invigorating and it's alive and it's filled with gratitude and appreciation. And then it becomes normal and it becomes habit and it becomes complacency and contentment. And then you just feel like you're losing any the moment you start to lose appreciation and gratitude for life, I think it's over internally for people spiritually. I think your
Yeah.
soul is just like, no, man, that, like, I'm just fucking dead on the inside. And you lose the ability to love at your highest level, to see the beauty at its highest level. And what ends up suffering are the committed relationships you're in.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your children and your parenting and your intimate relationship with your spouse, your wife, your partner, whatever. The moment you lose that appreciation and gratitude, which is associated to becoming complacent and creating some kind of normalcy in your life, I think a lot of us, and here's the thing about that too, is some people's seasons in lives, that the way that happens, which is just a necessity to survive a certain pocket of your life, can be months, can be weeks, can be years, it can be whatever. But if you really truly want to, create those deep connections and move to another level of internal whatever, I think life and purpose in life for most people eventually, once business falls aside and all these other things, is the relationships and your service towards those commitments and those relationships. And even those are finite. People die, people move on, and so anybody that secludes themselves and finds themselves alone are the people that really struggle a lot. And so I think you just create this kind of normalcy, and then you just wake up one day and decide you're going to have an affair with some dude, and you destroy a lot of relationships in the path. And so it's like you gotta start looking at some of these things and go, is it really worth creating all these walls to protect myself, or should I just be facing these things with a little bit more courage, and whatever that looks like and how that's going to be for you. um, it's a tough conversation for a lot of people because they're either living it currently, or they're in it, or they haven't experienced it yet because they're just not deep in their life at that
Yeah.
point yet, and they don't even really understand what any of this shit is. But I try to tell people that, like, there is no constant state that you're just rolling. Like right now, I'm at total peace, man. I think my life is the best it's ever been. I don't. The thought of it even being better than it is now is unfathomable to me. But I know it's possible. I know there's something there, but it's like I don't know what it is, and I don't know what it looks like.
And it's a pretty sweet setup right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain at all. But you have this line, and what ends up happening is your frequency of life, that kind of whatever your level of this line of wherever it's at in your season, is going down and it's going up. It's in your peaks and it's in its valleys. And the idea is is to keep it from getting too low and getting too high.
Mm-hmm.
The way you raise the level of happiness is raise the level of that line in which you're floating in and around of.
Yeah.
So if you have a super low line of whatever that means as far as inner growth, your low is super fucking low. It fucking hurts.
Yep.
And super high is like, I'm kind of happy. But the moment you keep those things just like, I'm kind of happy, I'm kind of low, I'm kind of happy, I'm kind of low, but your line is lower, and then you transcend some lesson learned in life, and you raise that bar just slightly. Now your medium or moderate happiness is way happier than where it was just at.
Yeah.
And your moderate low is still happier than where the lower bar was. So it's a weird conversation to let people have some patience in life to understand that, like, dude, you got to keep moving this needle to the north.
Yeah.
And then you've got to keep your lows as, don't go too far on the extreme on one side, and don't be shooting for super happiness on the other. And people start filling that happiness curve with, like, I bought a new fucking car, and it's like your happiness curve is like, and then, you walk in and you get in some wicked fight with your wife, and you take that and you're like, and now you're back low. It's just like, no, how do we just like, oh, buying a new car is cool, and you're just at this kind of level of, so no matter how low it gets or how high it gets, you're still sitting at like a pretty decent level of peace. Peace is kind of the end game. Like,
Yeah.
that's the goal that you're just trying to maintain, your wave kind of floating around that line, which is, if it gets too far below the line or too high above the line, you lose your peace. So, and I guess that's the balance of life, and it's really, what's the conversation of how we get there?
Yeah. So I keep trying to wade into the areas that we've missed, but
There's no,
I know.
we have no intent for this conversation. We're just,
I know. It's just the
Whatever
past
happens.
year processing, and I've learned new things
yeah, for sure.
sitting down with you.
Um,
But it'll be interesting when you sit down with Danielle and she talks about her side of things, because I feel like in the past 2 years, you've both been on this personal journey of
mhm.
epic proportions, where you've delved really deep into spirituality and who you guys are as people, as not a couple, but as your individual selves.
Yeah,
and what
we're,
that means to each other.
well, we're two people that add to each other's lives,
Yeah.
instead of completing each other's lives.
Yep.
Like, I'm not looking for Danielle to fill some hole, some void that I have within myself. And she's not looking for me to do the same thing. I'm just looking for her to come into my wavelength and add something to it. That's it. And I think a lot of us really struggle with that piece. That it's like, I was listening, I forget where this conversation was, but the guy was describing life as a pie. And it's like, if all you focus on, and it's so imbalance is, I do everything I can for my wife. That's your pie.
Mm-hmm.
I do everything I can for my wife. What happens when she has an affair on you and she leaves you. Life is disaster.
Yep.
But if your pie is, okay, I have this little small piece to my work, I have purpose there, I have this little small piece to my children, I have purpose there, I have a little small piece to my wife here, I have my friends, I mountain bike on the weekends, I enjoy to climb, I have my fitness here for me.
Yeah.
When you lose fitness, you have all those other things to have purpose and fulfillment in. If something happens between you and your wife and your kids or whatever, you still have all those other things to fill some of the completeness of you. They're not voids, they're just everything else is just picking up the slack, for lack of a better term. So it's almost like putting all your eggs in one basket, and then
portfolio of purpose, kind of.
Yeah, and I think this is where I kind of have these conversations with with my own kids and my own family, so they kind of understand there are things that have been constant in my entire life that I know for a fact that I've kind of identified over this last year. One is honoring your body, whether that's your lifestyle or your nutrition that you're putting in your body, how much you're sleeping, how much you recover, and then what type of exercise or movement that is just best for you has to happen daily at some point. I don't care what it looks like. I don't know if it's yoga or CrossFit or bodybuilding or mountain biking or whatever. You just have to move.
Yeah.
And you've got to have some sort of balance of like, what types of foods am I putting in my body? How often do we drink? How often, do we stay up late and and at least be conscious around that idea. I don't think I've missed more than a week of fitness since I was 12 years old. So I have to acknowledge that some of my resiliency and some of my emotional capacity is directly related to the health of my body. And I don't know that anybody can dispute that unless you're just ignoring science and biology. I wholeheartedly hope you just try to go down that path because it just doesn't work. The second thing, I've always been a curious person and I've always studied something.
Yep.
Whether I'm looking at new ideas for art or I'm learning the ukulele or there's always been something that I wake up daily and I'm like, I've got to learn something. I've got to gather information around something, whether it has something to do with my life or not.
Yeah.
Lately it's more reading books and, even right now, the exploration of even just writing is the sense of like trying to learn something a little bit more about yourself. So, I tell people that you just need to be a forever student.
Yep.
And that's
Absolutely.
it's such an easy thing. Wake up and read a book for 30 minutes on something that interests you and gain a little bit more knowledge about it. You'd be surprised on how many people just go through the day without learning something new or being conscious enough to understand that something new has been introduced to them and they just didn't take it for what it was.
Or to just ask a question.
Yeah.
Like,
Have a conversation with somebody.
look around and try to understand something.
Scrolling Facebook isn't learning a fucking thing.
Yeah.
You may be learning some negative shit in the world, but I don't know if that's necessarily good for you. And then I think the third thing, and I already talked a little bit about purpose, that I believe it's around relationships. So I tell people you have to, one, create purpose. I don't think you just go find purpose or like, oh, this shit just happens. I think you create whatever your shit is, and I think you have to embrace whatever that creation looks like. But I think they revolve around relationships, and so I break it down into 3 aspects. It's work, family, and social. So it's like there's a lot of people that find purpose and fulfillment in having a big social life and having a big group of friends that they go out and do, I don't know, World of Warcraft tournaments or whatever your thing is. I use CrossFit's a perfect example. There's a lot of people that gravitate towards CrossFit and they do competitions on the weekends and they drink beers with each other on the thing. You have your social purpose. You have this, your tribe, your identity and you've got to create that somewhere. And then your family. Some people choose to not have family. And I think that, the definition of family, that it's like some kind of blood related thing, I think is not true. So you do have your social friends, but then you actually have your family. Those are the people that you tell everything to, minus the really intimate details that you keep between you and your wife. But other than that, they know almost everything about you. And so those need to be nurtured and those need to be fostered, and you got to have some kind of purpose around those. Like, why are we in this relationship together? What are we trying to do? Um, and then there's work. And this is where I have issues with some of the conversations around like, do what you love, have passion around you
Yeah.
love. Dude, it's like, what if you just love the people you work with, but
Yep.
you hate the task? Like, is there fulfillment there? Most people that are in those situations will say yes. Be like, dude, I hate digging ditches, but those three dudes I work with, we tell
Yeah.
jokes all day, we laugh, it's amazing, and we know that this digging ditches is going to lead to the construction of a home, and people are going to live in a new home, and we've provided
Yeah.
something for somebody. So I think how you define what that purpose looks like and how those relationships revolve around your work task is really so individually dependent. And I think that's a hard conversation. And then with those three things, the conversation turns into, well, uh, like, what does that mean? Where do I start? How does, well, you have to create honesty around all of them
Yeah.
first. Like, which one is actually authentic and true, and which ones are what? Am I actually actioning on the fitness that I'm saying that I want to do that revolves around this and X, Y, and am I actually eating a healthy diet like I say I am, or am I not? Whatever your shit is, I think you just need to find some brutal honesty around what a lot of that is, because none of it is true and authentic or even really actually exist unless there's honesty around all of it. But I tell people to never work on more than three things at once. And so whether that's like, if you've created purpose and you're like, dude, family's good, my social life's good, work is good, but my fitness is a train wreck right now. And I read 30 minutes every day, and I have that habit there, but I'm not really all that consistent with it yet. Maybe that's something I want to work on. It's like, okay, cool. Well, let's do this. Let's pick two things out of fitness that we want to work
Yeah.
on, and let's do one thing in the student, and let's just let the habits that you've created around your purpose just season and just let it do its thing. And because what people end up doing and where the failure happens is they're like, they go all in on 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different areas. They're like, I'm waking up every day at 6 a.m. and I'm drinking that water with the lemon, and I'm going to read for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to meditate for 10, and then I'm going to go do fitness for 90 minutes, and then I'm going to meal prep as soon as I get home, and I'm going to pack all this stuff, and then it becomes so overwhelming you don't create habits on any of them. So the question is like, okay, I'm going to work on nourishment and movement every day. Okay, don't worry about what the movement is, just move every day. I
Yeah.
know you need to pick something, but don't worry about like, well, should I be getting stronger at back squat? Should I be this? It's like, no, if you don't have movement yet, let's just move first. Let's ride a bike for 30 minutes every day. Let's
Yeah.
figure out that aspect first until you create a habit to where you know you can create some consistency around your movement, and then we'll start trying to find some specificity in there. And then if nutrition's the other one you pick, it's like, okay, well, let's just identify a piece about your nutrition that we could work on. My quality of food is terrible. Well, okay, well, let's do this. We're going grass-fed and pasture-raised meat, and that's it. That's all we're fucking with for now.
Yep.
Until that's the habit. And you have to simplify it that much. It's because it's the people that go, okay, well, nutrition's technically only one thing. And then you start looking at the layers and the steps of nutrition. And you're like, okay, so I'm going to change the quality of the food and the timing of the stuff. I'm going to track my macros. I got to make sure I drink 100 ounces of water, and I got to do all this stuff. And then all of them fall by the wayside because there's no habits created there. So I think if you look at that as a triangle and create triangles within that triangle, you'll see how intertangled they all become and how deeply inward you can travel based on that concept. The moment you create a habit around another thing, you move on to something else. The moment you create another habit around something else, you move on to something else. But you better have some honesty and create some consciousness around those three things, or you're going nowhere, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. It works for me.
Well,
and it works for a lot of people.
I think there's a lot of people that are very goal oriented and achievement oriented and like to feel like there's a visual representation of where they're headed. I think you're really good at laying that out for people.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out a way to write that and have that like that's I get what he's saying there. But the problem is, and this is where I have a hard time with people, that if they are looking for that and they're stuck and they're in a weird spot, that I think this is why relationships are so important, and I think that's why Having a coach is so important because they're the dude that just looks back at all the information and goes, we should only dick with these this month.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of them being more than just a fitness coach,
Yeah.
which is another reason why I love the OPEC stuff so much, because they've identified that individual and the importance of that relationship in your life in modern day. Because before you didn't have to worry about this shit, right? Like if we didn't have cars and all this other kind of bullshit, and we were just shit here from the rib of Adam, if that's your belief. Let's just say that's what it was. Like your fitness is survival every day. It's like get the fuck up and go find some food. Like that was your movement. That was your fitness. And then there was no shitty food to eat, so you didn't have to worry about nutrition. And then your purpose was don't die.
Yeah.
And reproduce. So it's like then you being a forever student is grabbing more skills through failures and experience of like not dying. Like that. So if the basic biology of that triangle was forced upon you.
Yeah.
Like it was just evolutionary biology is like, no, if you want to make it to tomorrow at sunrise, you better fucking do some fitness and find some good food. And like, it's so simple. And your purpose is like, be aware, don't die, take care of your family because you decided you reproduced. It's like, dude, it's so easy to stay within that triangle back then. But now it's like, I got to buy new shoes. I need a car. Fucking my boss wants me to work an extra hour today. Modern life. We get more information in a day than we used to in an entire lifetime. So the question is now is like, what do we do with that information and how do we sift through it?
How do you cull that stuff out? I think.
Well, you become unguiltable. That's the first thing.
We can talk about that. I don't think you're really unguiltable.
Unguiltable, man.
I feel like.
So here's the thing. When people get wrapped around that, they get this idea of like unguiltable gives them the idea that you don't care.
Which isn't true.
Yeah, it's not that I don't care. It's like we talked
with you.
Yeah, we talked about the kids being taken from their parents on the border, right? It's like, look, do I want that to happen? No. Do I think kids should be taken from their parents? No. Does it make me feel bad? No. It doesn't make me feel bad. I don't know what to. Here's the deal. If it made me feel bad, then I need to pack my shit up in my truck. I need to drive to the border. And I need to save as many illegal immigrant families as I can on action. Yeah. Backed by action. So I accept the fact that I'm not willing to do that. So I'm not going to feel bad about their circumstances because I'm not in the situation. And I chose to not be in the situation. And I'm conscious about it. Now, it doesn't mean I don't care. Just because you don't action or help or whatever, it doesn't mean you don't care, because I didn't make formal, intimate commitments to those people. Now, if I did, it's a different conversation.
I think what we've been talking about for the past year is a different level of radical honesty with yourself. Mm-hmm. And you're very good at just drawing that baseline and saying, like, nobody else is willing to say this out loud, but this is my internal truth. And I know that if it really was that important to me, I would take action on it. You should be able to make that same statement.
Yeah. Well, and the simplicity of it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, why don't put any more layers on it or any more complexity around the conversation. Look, dude, if you're not willing to move from point A to point B to make a difference, then the conversation's over.
I know.
So the energy then is like, are we just going to sit in a room and be like drinking bourbon? I can't believe the immigrant kids and it's like, dude, that energy expressed in the universe doesn't benefit you or them. Yeah. It doesn't benefit either one. So until you're willing to put out energy that benefits one or the other, it's just a waste, man. And it almost sounds heartless as I verbalize it.
Well, I feel like you're in different shoes than a lot of people too, though. Whereas like you've actually been in those situations and you've seen things.
Yeah. Well, because when I cared, I did.
and you still have told me that you couldn't make the impact that you felt like you needed to make, even in those.
Yeah, and some of them.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that's tough. Conversation that I have with people is like, I'm grateful for the gift and the time that's been given to me in the situation that's been presented to me.
Yeah.
Should I feel guilty about taking advantage of that? Sorry,
No.
man.
Yeah.
No.
Not going to.
Because the thing is that the starving kid that was born in Africa, like I can't feel bad about it. It was my fault.
You can't take
Now, if it weighed on me, honestly, I create my best self. I set up logistics here to where everybody's taken care of. And then I go and commit and volunteer time there. But I don't make sacrifices for my own well-being and the well-being of the immediate direct commitments that I have based on the purpose that I've created to go out and help those things, because it's not good for the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah. And it used to, I know when we used to get into conversations all the time because it infuriated me that you, to me, only see in black and white. And there's only true or false. You're very binary. But
Sort of.
when you dig into the conversations and when we get a little bit deeper, there's logic behind where you're going with it. And there's a simplification of just decision making that's
Yeah.
beyond the black and white.
Yeah.
But me, as someone who traditionally likes to make a lot of excuses, it used to just like drive me crazy.
Yeah, it's really it's a hard place to get into where you're very conscious about energy in and energy out. Where am I getting energy from, and where am I putting energy into, and almost a cost benefit analysis of the whole thing. Like,
Yep.
and it sounds selfish to be like, well, how does that benefit me? But it's how does it benefit me so I can operate optimally, so I can serve mankind and leave this shithole better than I got it.
Yeah.
If it is a shithole, my nothing I have is a shithole. I'm just, super grateful for it, and I take full advantage of the opportunity that I've been given. But I've also, been to 15 different countries to help, foreign militaries create some kind of internal defense and up their things, and, touch families that only make $700 a year. I've fed kids that were missing limbs because they were fucking playing with landmines. Like, so that's why I take advantage of what I have, because fucking cards could have been laid out totally different for me, but they weren't. And I'm not going to feel bad about that. Again, it's like, how do we leave it better than we got it? And so for me, the moment I started making those commitments to my wife and then shit out some kids, how do I make those kids better than I am? And that's sort of some of the impact that you can, once you make those commitments, fuck, man, you got other human beings now that are legitimately relying on you. Modern day society would probably take care of them, but it wouldn't be good for them emotionally. But they would always have a roof and food for the most part. If they just fell in some kind of fucking system, not that they're good or bad or whatever, but you have to at least acknowledge the fact that, like, your energy then is just fucking wasted worrying about bullshit. And part of my issue is that people want to worry from the top down.
Yep.
And worrying from the top down isn't going to fix a fucking thing, man. I'm not going to get on a politics conversation, but it's like, dude, what if you, like, if we all fixed what was in our immediate reach and touch in front of us and worked upwards from there, instead of just like, oh, the new president and my life is going to just be drastically fixed this year. I know it. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's just not.
Yep.
But I do understand that there is some psychology around it, in the sense that, like, what hope can provide people and how it can emotionally damage you. And I think we have to acknowledge that, but we also have to acknowledge the fact that, like, we've created that system to get people to put too much hope in something that actually doesn't tangibly directly affect their lives to an extent.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people that it's like there's some policy changes and some other shit probably directly affects, and I'm not
Yeah.
trying to negate their shit, but you know, as a small business owner, there was like some city shit that was going on one time. Like, oh my God, some guy was coming by, was like trying to sell me on this shit. He's like, dude, the taxes are going to change and some other stuff, and we need to rally as small business owners. And I was like, yo, fuck, I'll just raise my memberships. And like, I don't
There's other ways
care.
around these
I don't
things.
have
Yeah.
I don't have the energy for that. I just have to now make an educated decision with the new information that's being presented to me to help keep the purpose that I created moving forward.
Yeah.
Do I now want to take energy out of what I'm trying to build to go fight some bullshit with you? No. I'll just pay the consequences. That way I can still put the energy where I think it's important.
And
So I think you just need to be honest about it.
that's a super hard conversation that a
Yeah.
lot of people would get stuck in, that you immediately
Yeah,
decisioned on.
I
And
don't have no time for that.
yeah,
Dude, there's so much time wasted
it
there.
drives me crazy.
I know. But we talked about it the
Yeah.
other day. So people were asking me how I kind of, and this may probably just be like lingerings of like military stuff. So for me, I'm thinking like if there's systems in place in the military that's like the end goal is one, somebody's going to die or you're going to die.
Mhm.
That's as extreme as it gets. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, if there's systems that have been in place for fighting wars for the past 200 years, there's probably a reason they're there. So why are we not implementing some of that stuff in our life? So I kind of look at things in three different areas. There's your commitments that's around your purpose. Those are the direct impacts. Those directly impact those things your decisions do. And then there's two. Those are the things that only directly affect you personally or indirectly, number one. So, i.e., you have work, family, and whatever. So, if
Yeah.
you're going to make a decision that directly affects their emotional intelligence or their current logistical situation or the environment,
Mhm.
then there's a lot more factors that need to go into play. All the emotions involved and all the outcomes and all the other kind of things. So, that's why I say I only break it down into three different things because you're never going to know. You can come up with 100 different options and you're never going to know which one's right until you
Yeah.
send it. So, it's like,
It's
do
true.
you want to spend a week on those 100 different options, or do you want to just spend a good solid hour, come up with three different options, your best ones that you can just think of right now? Because normally, intuitively, you normally have the right. You always go back to the first one. I did this the other day. I fucked
Yep.
around trying to find a video for like 6 damn hours, and I went back to the very first one I picked.
Yep.
After 6 hours, you intuitively, you got to find that balance of intuitive intelligence and your actual common sense rational intelligence, and find that fine balance of what your shit is. Well, what's up, Trinley? So the thing is I just come up with those three things, find the one with the most upside, and I just send that shit. And then start dealing with, there's always going to be consequences. There's always going to be knee-jerk reactions. There's always going to be things that go wrong or right or whatever. So stressing about it and trying to control it is just wasted energy for the most part. And if you're in a leadership position, most people are just looking for a fucking decision from you.
Absolutely.
You're faking it most of the time. That's a hard reality for people. Leaders instill confidence and they get the ball rolling. They're not making the right decisions.
Yep. Not all the time, at least.
Well, making the right decision sometimes is just a decision. But yeah, and I just fire those things and then just next task. So I spend very little time on that stuff. And you can ask people, you know, even when I opened my business, it was like, hey, we're going to open this business. And then a week later, we were like signing a lease. They're like, what the fuck? What? Wait. I'm like, no, man, we got time to think about it. We got to move. We got stuff to do. Because again, it's one of those things where like fucking kill or be killed kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then there's two. There's the ones that directly affect you. So it's like, if it only affects me, does it feel good right now? Fuck it. Send it. Send it. Like,
Trust your instincts.
yeah, send it, man. Trying to find a good example for that, but I think you guys kind of understand the concept that I'm saying.
Yeah.
So number one and number two deserve energy. Whatever level you want to give that to. Number three is everything else. That's fucking zero energy, man. It's no energy. Now that doesn't mean you don't have an awareness around it,
Yeah.
or you don't know it's happening. I don't keep an eye on what politics are doing, and whatever the case may be, whatever you're interested in, whatever sparks thought inside you that can be lessons learned to move towards growth. That kind of stuff, I think you should keep an eye on. But energy, worry, anxiety, the things that are creating fear, like those things that are associated with giving energy to things that don't actually directly affect the stuff that you can actually change, is where we do spend some of our energy. We all get sucked into it. It's just really trying to be conscious around where you're letting it out and when you're doing it is fucking hard.
Yep.
Because it's really easy to get like, it's like, I don't own a CrossFit gym anymore, but like I see the changes to the CrossFit games, right? Like I'm just using this as an example because I don't know how to put it. It's really hard to be like, whoa, what? Why are they doing that? That doesn't, and you want to start like, oh, but why? And then you're reading threads on like what's going on, and
Get sucked in.
and I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't have anything to fucking do with me.
Yeah. Nothing.
I'm not going to the
nothing
CrossFit
about
games.
this affects
I'm
my
not
life.
going to the CrossFit games.
Yeah.
So it's out. But yeah, being able to have like a thoughtful conversation around whatever is just because I have some awareness around things. And if I do not have the stuff, like seek an expert for it and have a conversation with them about it, or go
Yeah.
read a research article and actually get some definitive data on whatever it is.
It sounds so fucking simple and logical. And yet we have this conversation just about every day where I like work myself up about something and
Yeah.
you're like, number 3.
Yeah, what did you sent me some shit the other day and I was like, fucking what?
Why are you worried about that? It could have been anything.
I'm not responding, Bethany.
Yeah, exactly. How does this impact your life?
Yeah.
You're right. It doesn't.
Yeah, but it again, I don't think not having awareness, because there's a lot of people like, well,
Can't just put blinders on.
we're gonna yeah, you can't just go through like, I'm like, dude, I'm not ignoring it.
Yeah.
There's a difference between giving it energy and being aware of it. Those are two different things. And I think you just need to be honest about where you're actually putting stuff, because the moment that you're gonna sit there and bitch at your wife, the moment you bitch at your wife because there's no connection,
Yeah.
dude, sit down and honestly ask yourself, dude, did I spend 4 hours today fucking around on Fox News trying to putting energy into a bunch of nonsense? So it's
True.
like, dude, if everything else is in line and you are at peace with all your shit and you don't have any complaints honestly about all that other kind of stuff, then dump energy into the other shit.
Yep.
But not until then.
Yeah.
Not until then, dude. Don't be living in misery internally in the relationships that you have around you, if that's what you value or whatever you value. But then dump energy into number 3.
Yeah.
And then expect some kind of sympathy from a guy like me. Dude, it's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen.
And the paradox of that, what you pointed out to me that finally sunk in the other day was when we were talking about work and I was investing all this time and energy into a different team that I wasn't running. And you finally just said, how is you investing your energy into that team helping your team?
Yeah.
And no, it's actually the other side of that. You're actually harming your people.
Yeah. Your actual work commitment, the ones you committed to,
by extending the energy to the other team. And it never had occurred to me that that's what was happening.
Yeah, you just got to remember that the energy that we have in ourselves isn't infinite.
Yeah.
It's just not, man. If you think that you have infinite energy, you're out of your mind, man. That shit is so finite, and there's only a certain amount of it to go around. So I hate using the word triaging, but
Yeah.
you got to triage your life and be honest with yourself and go.
Triage your attention.
Yeah. Well, what is my resilience level? How much can I actually give? Okay, if mine's this, what are the 5 things that fit in there?
Yeah.
If mine's this, okay, what are the 10 things that fit in there? Whatever you're, but it's the people that lie about it and they're like, oh no, I'm way more than this. But then I'm one of those people. I'd lied to myself for years, like that I can just take on more. And then it went from 4 hours of sleep a night to 3, and then went from 3 to 2, and then went from 2 to 1. Then it was like I couldn't fucking control myself, fucking crying myself to sleep for that 1 hour. Lost all emotional connection with all the things that were actually really important to me. So I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I've been there. It's not like this cautionary tale thing, but
It's the truth.
yeah, and we all do it.
Yep.
And you're going to go through the seasons like that where it will be a necessary evil.
Yep.
You may have to do it to. I listened to this thing the other day where it was like raising an infant requires 33 hours a week.
That's it?
33 hours. Okay, so like right now, could you find 33 hours to?
In a week? I
Yeah,
do.
that's another job. It's another job.
Yeah.
So that's the question is, it's like, where will you have to take energy out of now
Yep.
to divert to this new commitment? Whether it was what you were looking for in that moment or not, doesn't matter. But there will be things that suffer temporarily. And you have to sort of at least acknowledge that, like, man, how do I minimize the damage or mitigate taking energy from the one to put it in the other to get this one to where it's at and it's moving and it's sustainable, so I can re-put that energy back into the other things that I value. So dude, you're gonna have to do it. Athletes are a perfect example. They put everything on hold to just all energy into my sport. This is what I'm doing. This is how I want to make a living. This is what, and everything falls by the wayside. The relationships fall apart. So that's just something that you got to at least acknowledge that that's just a part of life.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to start it when I was fucking 20.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know better. I didn't even know what was happening. I just woke up one day and fucking old, and I can finally feel emotions, and everything was already sort of done.
Yeah.
And I think that's I don't know why I was thinking about it the other day, but it was like these people that start families in their 30s and 35 and 40, and those timelines, like, that just stresses me out for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, you
So
you
tired.
know a life
Yeah.
that's this balance and it's happy and we do this and shit. And now you just add a kid to that.
Yeah.
From that 30-year habit. It's like, dude, I didn't even create any habits yet at 20. I didn't have any habits yet. I didn't know anything. I was just like, oh, new habit, kid. That was all I knew, right? So
Yeah.
I think acknowledging that is an important thing, because you may be sitting in a situation right now wondering why your marriage is failing or why this thing's in. It's like you just start peeling back the layers of all these things, and you're like, oh, it's because I diverted energy to create sustainability in my children. And that's okay. It just is what it is. And sometimes there's those like pockets where you guys kind of do this, and then it's around whatever your thing was, and then they come back together. So
yeah.
What do you want, shitbag? Yeah, go shut him up. No, dude,
cool.
he's in the main room, bro. So 10, our speedy little turd nugget, which is our Italian greyhound, is he just doesn't like to be away from people. So he has just been yapping at us. He's been yapping the whole time. Well, there you go, man. That was Bethany's exhausted. Look at her.
That was long.
She's like, I'm done.
We didn't even get into a lot of stuff, but
we got into quite a bit. I think if we go back and listen to that, it's gonna be stressful. It's gonna be hectic. That's hectic.
Possibly.
That's my word of the month. Hectic.
You gonna edit that down to like?
No, man. These are how they are.
Oh shit.
Yeah. People listen to this, and if they don't, who cares?
Okay.
It's a good combo. Well, I am a little emotionally tired from that now.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
But yeah, at least I appreciate anybody that made it this far. Thanks for listening to that whole thing, and thanks, Bethany, for coming here and having somebody to feel like I was having a conversation, when I think for a good solid hour of that I was on my own.
It's okay.
I was just rambling there. But yeah, we'll do it again. Bethany's really good at diving into and kind of picking out some of those things, and
yeah, I heard
noticing
stuff I haven't ever heard before today, so
yeah,
which is surprising. But
well, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming to hang with me.
Thanks for having
We'll do it again.
All right.
Beat it, bitches.